First Amendment right of free speech. You know, people come here to speak, and they shouldn't be interrupted, and we should have a standard that applies fairly to everybody. If you're not interrupting me right now, you shouldn't interrupt him when he waited such a long time and then not put it in the minutes. Because someone else who's looking over the minutes to see what happened might look at it and say, hey, that ain't right. I'm going to come down to the city council and get involved. It's important that the people be able to look over the minutes and have an accurate account, fair to everybody, about the things that happen, and be consistent with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to add something to that since my name was mentioned. The reason I interrupted John Paul Mitchell was because he was misquoting me from something I had said earlier in that same meeting. So that's why I was saying that's not what I said. Thank you.
I do believe that Mr. Spear has a point about us being consistent in not interrupting when they're having their 3 minutes. So, and we're working very hard to make sure that we abide by that. So, thank you. That's item number 1. Does anybody else wish to speak on item number 1 on the agenda this evening?
Maybe I'll just mention I appreciate what Bill Spears, Pastor Bill Spears, what he said in regards to accuracy. I do think it's important. I appreciate his understanding in the communities as well, that all of our staff are really past their the capacity. We're all really stretched thin. Our staff inside City Council or the City Hall are really, a lot of them serving more than one job and doing things that are really even outside of their contract or their hiring. So I think it's also just important to note that they do, I know that they strive to be accurate, but they are all just taxed on so many different levels. I wish we had more funds. That's why it's important for us as well to seriously consider as a community this tax initiative that we're looking at. We're really in dire straits as a city, and finances are a serious concern of ours, so that we can have appropriate staff to make sure that all the matters that we handle are done so with due diligence and excellence.
Thank you. Councilmember Draper, are you back in the queue there?
No, that's just on from before.
Okay.
It didn't turn it off.
Thank you. Looking for a motion on item number 1.
I move we approve the minutes.
I second that.
I pushed yes, and it's not going. Okay, there it did finally.
Yes, for me.
The motion passed with the mayor's vote as a yes.
Moving on to item number 3, appointment to the Oroville Parks Commission. Vice Mayor Goodson, you have a comment or a question?
Yes, I wanted to pull this because this is an appointment to the Oroville Park Commission. And to date, there was only one applicant that has applied for that position. For those of us who are avid readers of Facebook, social media, there are multiple Facebook pages that address concerns regarding the condition, the maintenance, and the operations of the parks, whether it be city or those operated and under the auspices of Feather River. What I would like to see is this position go back into circulation, especially on social media. I would venture to say that another avenue of exposure would pull a much wider applicant base.
Any other comments?
Well, I agree with that. I think we need more than one applicant to ensure quality on that board.
Madam Mayor, Don Rust, we will post it again on Facebook if you'd like, but it has been posted on Facebook. That's where we advertise for a lot of these positions.
Right.
This has been the only thing, or the only application that we've received. So if you would like it to go out again, we will do that.
I have a question. Which Facebook page was this posted on?
I believe
The
it's
City of
the
Oroville.
City of Oroville's page.
Oh, okay, so what I'm making reference to is, for example, BOB, Bring Oroville Back. There are specific Facebook pages that have a large base of membership. And so is that something that we can do?
So you can
Post
share,
it on multiple?
you can
face-
share it off the city Facebook page.
We can request for it to be shared on those pages.
I can make that request? All right, thank you, Dawn.
Can I make a comment regarding that? Because I've been through some of these, and it's actually, we pay for a sponsorship, and so it automatically shows up on the local people's pages. So it is something that is not on a specific page. It's something that pops up to local people
Right.
randomly.
So the people that like the city page and or the people and their friends
It
and
just
so on.
comes
So
up.
it really
It's
has
a
randomly.
sponsored ad.
Actually, how that works, and I think this is what you're getting at, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's a sponsored ad, anybody within a certain geographical area, when they log into Facebook can see the IP address and recognize that that's coming from someone within, so it will populate that on the side for anybody that logs in from Oroville. I will say this, when I logged in, I want to say at the coffee shop, I saw it popped up on the side. So
Well, it actually even populates in the feeds of people that like the page too. There's another speaker, Bobby O'Reilly.
Good evening, Council. I am a avid user of Facebook, and I just wanted to let you guys know that yes, that is correct. The sponsorship does pop up on some of our Facebooks. However, when you have multiple listings, sometimes one listing is the only one that pops up on your guys's from your guys's Facebook, and the only one that I've seen popping up lately is for a city planner, I believe is on there. I have not yet seen one for a parks commissioner position. So my venture to guess would be that if this was reposted, some folks like myself, and I'm sure Vice Mayor and those of us who use Facebook would be more than happy to share it to other pages.
Okay. Who is wanting this to go back out or vote on it this evening?
It is my request that it go back out.
Consensus? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You want us to do a vote? Okay.
if you're going to appoint, I would like a motion in a second. If you're not going to appoint and go back out, then
Okay.
then you just need consensus.
It's going to go back out. Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, we had a speaker request. Resolution of support for the City of Oroville supporting the Reducing Crime and Keeping California Safe Act of 2018. Billy Spear, I believe, was the speaker. And did you need the presentation, or did you just have a question on this, or or you want to make comments? Get it. Get it. Got it.
Mayor, real quick, you had 2 speakers because I was one of them also. Actually 3.
Why, yes, we do.
And Eric Smith is a speaker as well.
And there's another speaker after you. Okay.
So I, again, thank you for this opportunity and for listening. As I read over this, I'd just like to read the discussion part on page 1. It says, over the past several years, a number of well-intentioned ballot measures and legislative actions have been implemented surrounding criminal justice reform and designed to focus on the overall intent of increased increasing opportunities for rehabilitation while lowering recidivism and incarceration rate. These are worthy goals, but there is, however, been an unintended cumulative effect that has created impacts in our community that we cannot ignore. The Police Chief Association represents more than 330 active police chiefs who are directly responsible for the safety of roughly 26 million Californians. Over the past several legislative sessions and election cycles, the CPCA and law enforcement partners have tried our best to integrate a series of major reforms into our criminal justice system. It is important to note that addressing these consequences, we were not proposing to do away with all of the recent change, and in no way are we advocating for a system of mass incarceration. As I read through this resolution, it's mind-blowing the things that have happened because of laws that were passed and by council members and by the voters, of the unintended consequences. And it really seems to be this resolution at a proper time for where we are in our city, because we are considering passing ordinances that are going to have unintended consequences that is going to add to all this. It's not going to help this. And so if we're voting here today to support this resolution, you think we would be consistent on our fight against the effect that these things are having. The vote last city council meeting, when 5 members voted to go forward on bringing a pot to downtown Oroville would magnify the effects of what you're probably all going to pass here, and it just seems really inconsistency. And you can see what well-intentioned things, the damage it's done. It's done to families and to businesses and to our whole state. And it's going to take grassroots, the people getting involved and coming and speaking up. Thank you.
Thank you. Bobby O'Reilly. And then Eric Smith.
Good evening again. Just because I wasn't aware before reading the agenda and pulling up exactly what this Reducing Crime and Keeping California Safe Act of 2018 was, I'm going to read what it is real quick from their website. They're a coalition of crime victims, law enforcement, business owners, and public safety leaders working to pass this act, which is called Reducing Crime and Keeping California Safe Act of 2018. They want our help with reclassifying currently nonviolent crimes like rape of an unconscious person, sex trafficking of a child, and 14 other serious crimes to mark those as violent rather than nonviolent, to prevent the early release of inmates convicted of those crimes. Reform the parole system to stop the early release of violent felons, expand parolee oversight, and strengthen penalties for parole violations. They also want to reform theft laws to restore the accountability for serial thieves and organized theft gangs, which serial thieves we have quite an epidemic of here in Oroville, unfortunately. They also want to expand DNA collection to include those convicted of drugs, theft, domestic violence, and other serious crimes, to help solve rape cases, murder cases, and other violent crimes, and possibly to help exonerate those who have been wrongly accused and incarcerated because of such. So upon reading this, I think it's a very good thing. There were some comments that I had read in a couple of places that some were under the assumption, as well as somebody that I was speaking with earlier had to look it up real quick, because some were under the assumption that it could possibly be something along the lines of a AB 109 and pulling wool over our eyes as to what it was. So I just wanted to read exactly what it is. I'm in favor of it. Many are. It's a very good thing for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Eric Smith. And then Mary Barr.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council. Appreciate the privilege of being able to talk to you. Just a brief couple of comments about this. I think it probably behooves all of us, I think when you have a resolution, you're stating that you're coming alongside an act such as this, that you're just simply saying as a city we're buying into this idea. And that's as far as it goes. You're not changing your laws or your legal system or anything. I think sometimes maybe the public doesn't fully understand what a resolution is or what you're achieving by doing this. That being said, I'm in full agreement. I mean, I think any of us that have been affected by crime and the increase of crime and some of the unintended consequences of some of the laws that came down the line as of late that this resolution clearly speaks to, I think is all good stuff. And I just wanted to kind of come along and add a couple of ideas or thoughts to this, and that involves our Chief Lagrone. And that is, I mean, this is good and all, and it's saying that we agree with the concepts of, you know, rebolstering our laws. That's good. But I think a more proactive approach would be perhaps the city could conduct some training meetings or informational meetings. For example, Feather Falls Casino, they did an active shooter class here recently. And so they had their 500 plus employees, you know, gather together. They brought in some experts, and they trained them what to do in the, you know, hopefully, you know, never have to use that training, but, you know, how do you handle that? What do you do? What do we do in that kind of a situation? And I know recently I was reading Action News, and I'm going to pull two things together here. Went to Action News, and they were talking about all the increase of crime in Oroville. And there was one comment by a city official, a name unmentioned, that was kind of bemoaning the challenges that you have. And we all know that you have challenges, staffing and whatnot. And I thought, boy, that's just like a big come and get Oroville, you know. We're an easy target to, you know, the criminals out there, the would-bes. And I thought, you know, rather than doing that, let's point out the strengths and the fact that as a city we are coming together and we're saying, no, it stops here. It starts with this, but perhaps you could explore through a resolution or at a further meeting, just with this concept in mind, you know, how the city can come alongside the businesses to, you know, what would the chief want from the businesses to help him in, you know, solving some of the crimes. And that was kind of the point in this piece on Action News. It was that, you know, we don't have enough resources, bad things happen, say la vie, sorry, not much more can be done. And I'm just thinking, you know, the folks, you know, we can be trained, or some tips or some training to help us in working together proactively with the chief and with our police to kind of, you know, help deal with some of this stuff. So we stem the tide, and we do it smartly. We do it under the, you know, the advice of our chief, and it's just put together smartly. So I love it. I think it's good. I think it's a good step, and I'd just like to see more proactive measures. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Barr.
Hi, thank you. As a former law enforcement officer, I completely support this program. I know over the last few years that there's been a lot of attempt to reform parole and to determine what a serious and violent crime is. I would suggest to you that rape of an unconscious person is a serious and a violent crime, and it should be stated as such. And just ask anybody who's been raped while they're unconscious when they wake up and it hurts somewhere where it shouldn't hurt, if it's not a violent thing that happened to them. So I completely agree with that. I think that certain crimes should be kept serious, should be kept violent, and I think we should, again, reform our prison system and parole system to address those concerns. And so I would love to hear from Chief Lagrone and see what he has to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief, did you want to speak to this at all? It was on the consent agenda for the purpose of that it was a resolution to move forward, but I think a few words might be good from you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and everyone. The item that's being presented is I believe, a crucial item. I mean, several things have occurred over the last few years. AB 109 followed by SB or Proposition 47, immediately followed by Proposition 57, and it has changed a lot of crimes to the status of non-serious, non-violent, and just like the last speaker said, rape of an unconscious person is now considered a non-serious, non-violent crime. I can't think of anything that is more serious and more violent that occurs to somebody and violates somebody such as that. So this is a very important initiative. I think we have to begin somewhere taking California back. Unfortunately, it's went in a direction, and it was unintended. It was done with the best of intentions, but we need to come back into some sort of reality. So I very much appreciate the community support on this. I very much appreciate Eric's comments regarding additional trainings and proactive measures that we can take, because there are things that I think that we need to do, a better job at the police department to educate, to help our retailers. I mean, our retailers are just getting, I want to use the term robbed, but they know that. So we have to do more to help them, and I think this is a good start. If we can reform this, that will be great. This is something that was put upon you, not by a city council, not by the legislature or anywhere else. It was done by a vote of the people. The people voted for these laws. It's not Sheriff Honey's fault. Sheriff Honey only has so much space in the jail. And that space is being used up. Your jail's been turned into a prison under these reforms. So you now have people that are spending up to 10 years in your local prison. It's no longer a county jail, where before you could only spend a maximum of 2 years in there. So everything has changed. This is nothing that we can change locally, but this is something that we can do locally to help support this initiative. So hopefully we can get the votes necessary in 2018 to apply these changes to the penal code.
So I have a question. When you say that it's a prison, local prison.
Correct.
Isn't there, didn't the city of Oroville vote something several years ago that we couldn't build a prison in our communities? I mean, is this like, are we splitting hairs here, or?
No, we're not splitting hairs. It's a prison. It's a county prison. And we do have in the charter we are a prison-free city, but not really. I mean, because, I don't know how those two things balance, because one happened, the vote was to be a prison-free city, but the jail existed inside of the city when that vote occurred, and nobody had any idea that this would ever occur. Well, this did happen, and then they were forced to become a county prison, because a lot of the inmates were sent back to Butte County to serve their time here. So at that time, that's when it became a prison. Now, I don't think we have any ability to push back or make them move or do anything like that, because technically inside the jail you're in the county, but outside in the parking lot you're in the city. So there's a lot of, you are correct, Mayor.
Okay. All right, moving on for a vote. If there's anybody that wishes to speak on this or looking for a motion on item number 4.
I move that we adopt resolution number 8687, which is a resolution of the City Council of the Oroville City Council supporting the Reducing Crime and Keeping California Safe Act of 2018.
I'll second that.
Voting is open. Well, it's almost open.
Hold on.
Technical difficulty?
It's open now. It's open now.
Okay.
Mine's a yes. All votes are in. Does anybody wish to change? Voting closed.
The motion passed with the mayor's vote as a yes.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 5, which is public hearings. Public hearing item number 5, support of proposed issuance of bonds for Oroville Hospital. City Attorney, Mr. Huber.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. This is this was requested by the Oroville Hospital to be placed on the agenda. The health facilities financing law allows hospital and local medical care facilities to access financing through public agencies. Public agencies have some of the lowest, some of the better bond ratings and some of the lower interest rates that allow for financing. Previously, I believe in 2012 was the last time financing was done, or 13, in that range. The city of Oroville passed some bonds on behalf of the hospital. They were variable rate bonds. With with this action, those bonds are going to be converted into fixed rate vehicles. The most important thing that I want to point out to each one of you and to all the council members is really in bold on the back page of the staff report. The city is not taking any risk or liability associated with the issuance of these bonds. If there is a default in those bonds, you do not have liability, not 1 cent. So with that, I will, this is substantially the same as it was back in 2012 or 13, whichever it was. But we do have a couple of individuals here. Ben Levine and Ravi Chidkara are here on behalf of the hospital. Ben Levine is is a placement agent with Wolf Hansen, who deals with financing quite a bit, and Ravi Chidkar is a municipal advisor and handles these matters, again, quite a bit. If you have any questions in the details of the documents, they would be the experts in that, but I can certainly answer any questions you may have that deal with this issue.
Is there any questions or comments from the dais before I open it for public hearing?
It's a new noise. Oh, that's yours. I was just going to confirm that there is precedence for this, that it was like 1986 or something that the city did a similar bond for the hospital.
Yeah, and actually back in 1985, the city adopted an ordinance that allows this very procedure. So this is on the books. Okay. It is, I will tell you quite candidly, this is not anything out of the ordinary. Almost every community does something like this on behalf of hospitals and medical facilities. Predominantly smaller communities. Larger communities have, plenty of facilities. So some of them don't necessarily need to, although many of them take advantage of it because it assists the individuals in your community in obtaining medical care.
Absolutely. Okay.
Anybody else before I open it for public hearing? This is a public hearing, and it's open for public hearing. I do have one speaker already in the queue. If there's anybody else, please let me know. Eric Smith.
Again, thank you for the privilege of speaking to you all. Very complicated issue, no doubt. And I just want to I guess, issue some caution or questions. Municipal bond, muni bonds are the highest for hospital purposes as opposed to roads and other functions. Typically have the highest rate of default of any type of bond. I also noticed that what jumped off the page was that there's no interest rate stated. So if you and I were going into business together, because most of these bonds are bought by rich people generally, right? And they're they're over in Larkspur where the company is that's doing this. They're in San Francisco. They're in big money folks, and making investments into the bond measure. But that being said, I just think it's to put this in sound bites that the folks can understand, because I'm trying to read through it. I know a little bit about a lot of stuff, and it's just to be more digestible. Specifically, how are the bonds going to benefit the hospital? How are we specifically indemnified, protected in the case of default? I mean, it's nice to say we're protected, but specifically, how are we protected? What happens when a muni bond does go south? Hospitals are one of the ones that have the highest rate of default. Just information. The other piece, which is a question, it says here in the discussion piece that we as residents will benefit by lower rates. And I just, but without any explanation. So it's just so if you all choose to, allow this to move forward, so how is it specifically benefiting the citizens of Oroville by backing the hospital? I know it's called a nonprofit, but there's people who make a lot of money off of this. And in a roundabout way, the city is, making folks, investors, people that own the hospital are a part of that. It's helping enrich them, if we were really to be honest. And that's okay. It's business. It's a partnership. I understand that. But I just think that it needs to be kind of boiled down. What are we really getting out of this? And really explaining the risk-benefit factor. So I'm just looking for information and more explanation. And the interest rates. That's great to move it from variable rate, which is probably smarter in this climate where we're seeing interest rates starting to uptick. And gee, we want to lock it in. It makes sense. And then how attractive is that to the buyers that are out there? I don't know. Those are all complicated questions, but just something to think about. I just like to see it boil down into some talking points to really, so we can get behind it and understand it, more clarity. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have, you brought up a couple of good points that I would maybe like some clarification on. One of them is if the interest rate is missing on there, why?
I'll invite Ben Levine up to talk. My understanding is that these need to be offered on the market before they can get an interest rate to plug in there. They actually go out, I mean, the market changes every day, so when they go out and actually offer these, they have to have authorization to go place this on the market. And when they place it on the market, then they can lock in the
Right,
rate.
they lock in the rate there. And the risk and the benefit, because we've had as council members, we've maybe had some interaction, but in getting what we got in the package, it's very hard to digest, and especially for the public to understand. So
sure. All right, my name is Ben Levine with Wolf Hansen, and Rafi Chakar is here, who's the municipal advisor. Back in 2012, when we did the bond issue that we're going to be refunding by the new bond issue, we did a variable rate bond. And at Wolf Hansen, the firm I'm with, during that period, both municipal advisory and underwriting placement agent services were allowed under the same entity. As a result of Dodd-Frank, that has been split apart. So at the start of every financing, the consultants that are involved are either underwriter placement agents or municipal advisors. And Ravi is the advisor for the hospital, and I'm the placement agent for the bonds. Now, the reason I say placement agent as opposed to underwriter, and this would maybe respond to some of the comments that were made, is in an underwriting, the bonds are underwritten by a municipal investment banking firm and sold to the public. They're sold and distributed through an official statement. They go to individuals, they go to small banks, they go to insurance companies. In a private placement, and there are certain parameters that are required for that, they are sold to institutional investors only. And the cost of issuance is much lower in that respect. The number of consultants that is needed is lower, and this particular financing will be allowed as a private placement, and we anticipate that that would occur. Now, the reason the interest rate is not mentioned, as Scott pointed out, is the fact that once we have approval to move forward, then a marketing event will take place, which will be the fact that what we will do as the placement agent, we will put together what is called a request for proposals and send it out to 50 banks throughout the country. They then will send in proposals both as to the terms and conditions and the interest rate. At that point, working with the Ravi and the hospital, a bank will be chosen. And then the bonds will be placed with that one institutional investor. Now, certainly I have a very good idea of what a bond would bring today. If we were pricing this today, the interest rate would be 3.5 to 3.75%. On the variable rate bonds that they currently have, and they've had a long run of very attractive low rates, as we all know. And in fact, I remember being here in 2012 when the variable rate bond was approved, and having a lot of speakers that thought it was crazy to do a variable rate bond, because certainly after rates had stayed low since 2008, and now here we were in 2012, the rates had to go up. Well, the reverse took place. The rates went down significantly lower, and over the last 5-6 years, the hospital has experienced very low interest rates on these bonds. However, now that rates have started back up, and with the cost of the letter of credit and all of the requirements of a variable rate bond, they're paying now
approximately 4.5%.
About 4.5%. So by going to a fixed rate now, before rates get any higher, this will lock in a rate below 4%. I'm pretty sure if we get the approval tonight, we will go immediately, put a package together and get the process going for placing the bonds. Now, addressing the issue of the liability of the city, that's evidenced by every document you can look at that you have in there. You have a loan agreement that specifically states that no amount of city money or assets are pledged to the payment of the bonds, even if the hospital defaults on the payment. The sole responsibility of the city is to act as a conduit issuer under the loan agreement, and then it's assigned to a trustee, and the hospital makes the payments on a monthly basis to the trustee, who then makes the payments to the investment bank that has purchased the bonds. The hospital has continued to do that since 2012. It has never missed a payment. It has grown substantially. There's something in the bond approach that is used to market bonds, and it's called debt service coverage. It's the amount of available revenue to make the payments on the debt service. And it looks like, what is the latest estimate?
10.25 and above.
10 to 1. That's an extremely high ratio. So the hospital is thriving with the help of the city in allowing these types of financings when they're appropriate to be issued. The hospital is a 133-bed hospital that is absolutely thriving, and I can just give you a personal aside on this. When I visited the hospital in 2012, I was really intrigued by the lab testing that goes on. I don't know if any of you have ever seen their operation, but at that time they were doing in a small part of the third floor 60,000 tests a day, and I thought that was absolutely 60,000 tests a month, and I thought that was absolutely amazing. And now I find out that they're well over 115 to 120,000 a month. So the hospital is doing extremely well.
As for the benefit that you're saying, it lowers the cost of buying equipment. And
can you speak into the microphone, please?
It lowers the cost of buying the equipment and running the operations of the hospital because the interest rate will be lower. So the benefit comes to the community because hospital will not raise the rates then.
So you mentioned a letter of credit, or talk a little bit about that. So what's the credit rating of the hospital right now?
Well, the letter of credit is only used in the variable rate issue.
Okay.
There's no letter of credit in this particular issue. Because it's a private placement, one of the cost savings is we do not have to get a credit rating.
Okay.
Because the investors, the institutional banks, do their own analysis, and they rely on their own credit analysis to do that.
So there won't be a credit.
There will not be a rating on this particular bond. If we were to do a public offering, we would get a rating, and I would estimate that based on the numbers, it would be in the A and A+ category.
I would like to also add, with a hospital of this size, generally the debt has been 60%. Debt payments have been 60% and above of the revenues every year. This hospital is around 20%, way low. It's being managed very well.
All right. Any other questions of these gentlemen while they're still here? Mr. Hatley.
Yeah. Right now, it's a nonprofit status. And I've heard some mention that sometime in the future, and I don't know when that is, whether it's going to be fairly quickly or if it's something out there, that they're going to look at maybe becoming a for-profit hospital. And if that is the case, then does that affect the city in any way over this bond? If they went from nonprofit to profit, but we approve it as a nonprofit, but if it changed to a profit, well, now that's not what we approve.
If that were to occur, the bonds would have to be called. If for some reason the hospital were to be sold as a private entity, part of that sale would be to totally pay off the bonds.
Okay.
So the status of the bond under the tax law is called 501c3 for the hospital right now.
Right.
Moment it is sold and it becomes for profit, 501c3 designation goes away. The bonds are issued under 501c3 designation, so these bonds will have to be first fully paid before the purchase goes through.
Okay, thank you.
But that's a very sophisticated question, by the way.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? This is still a public hearing. Thank you very much, gentlemen. This is still a public hearing. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on item number 5, support of the proposed issuance of bonds for the Oroville Hospital? Anybody? I'm gonna close
Can I just add one sentence?
You
Just
can.
vote with Mr. Hatley. I had it in here, I didn't say it, but vote with the end in mind. I was going there, I just didn't say it, kind of ran out of time. But yeah, that's very important.
Public hearing is closed on item number 5. Looking for a motion.
I move that we adopt resolution number 8688 and adopt resolution number 8689.
I'll second those.
First and second voting will be open momentarily. Yes, sir.
Has the agenda been changed?
Microphone.
I didn't know if the agenda had been changed appropriately from a variable rate to a fixed rate.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I failed to mention that. I forgot to mention that at the very beginning. There was a revised staff report. The original staff report mentions a variable rate. There was an amended staff report that I emailed to all of you. I forgot to point that out for the members of the public, that there is an amended staff report that's over on the corner over there that removes the term variable rate and has other minor non-technical changes. But yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out because I forgot to mention
I just wanted to make sure it was there because my agenda here says variable, and
Right.
I wanted to make sure that it was clarified in the other.
We might need to clarify that in the motion and read it as a fixed as opposed to what's on the agenda.
If you'd like to, that's fine.
Who made the motion?
I made the motion.
Amend your motion, yeah, to state fixed.
I move that we adopt resolution number 8688, adopt resolution 8689 with the amendment from a variable rate to a fixed rate.
I'll second that again.
Voting's open. My vote's yes. All votes are in.
The motion passed with the mayor's vote as a yes.
Thank you. Moving on to regular business this evening, item number 6, Fog Avenue Drainage Rehabilitation Project.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I need to
Recuse?
excuse myself from
Okay.
this. My sister owned, I don't have any property rights or anything on Fog Avenue, but my sister does. And just for the sake of argument, so nobody can say that I voted because she lives on that street, I'm going to excuse myself from this.
Anybody else own any property close to that? Do any of us? Do you know? Mr. Huber?
I have no idea.
I'm over
We
500
don't, we don't,
feet.
I don't.
It's within 500 feet of the project.
1 grand.
Oh, it's over that way.
1 grand.
Okay.
West of there, but it's, I believe this only
This
deals
is off a
with
Grand, right?
Yeah,
on Fog.
yeah. Mayor and Council, Mike Massaro, Contract City Engineer. Yeah, this is just south of Nelson, on Fog between Nelson and Grand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
All right, does anybody have any questions or comments on item number 6? Vice Mayor Goodson.
I'm just curious, I'm looking at the date, and there was a constituent that called in on January 2018. That's less than 2 months. And so my question is, well, this came up very quickly on the agenda. So my concern is, considering the fragile state of our budget, our general fund, I believe that we need to hold off on this project and the many other road repairs that we have been holding off on that have been identified and that are on a wait list. So could you just give me some clarity?
Yeah,
as
this
to
one came to me as an email, said we have a drainage issue out here on Fog Avenue. The Public Works Supervisor for Streets and I went out there and looked at it. The complaint was that this is a drainage issue they've been having for quite some time, and it's caused the folks there some issues, and some have even tripped and fallen because of the pothole in the road and the ponding that occurs there. And we went out and looked at it and agreed that there's an issue there that's going to continue to grow. There's the pavement is being torn up a bit there due to the ponding, and there's really no place for that water to go. The trend is for that water, as it collects, to flow south from Nelson towards Grand, but in this area where we have the sidewalk gap, it can't. And so this is going to continue to be an issue. So we just came up with a couple of conceptual design options for how we might alleviate the situation, with ideally being a sidewalk closure with curb and gutter, which would allow the street to drain more normally. But that would be a much more expensive option. So we looked to the cheapest way we could solve the problem, and that is to add a couple of drain inlets and connect to the existing storm drain system there. And then we further looked to find a cheaper way to implement a project here by using city staff to build it and not going out to bid. And I talked it over with public works staff, and they thought it was something they could achieve. But it's not taken in a context of comparison to other projects or roadway. This is effectively a storm drainage project, so it'd be, as I understand, funded out of the general fund, whereas the pavement projects that we already took out to bid and are about to start here in around April timeframe, those are funded under highway users tax funds and the RSTP funds that we've accumulated for that purpose. So they're slightly separate, the pavement projects we're doing versus this project. I understand there's other places in town where we have some drainage challenges.
Absolutely.
And a lot of areas where we don't have curb and gutter, open ditch, and it goes back and forth between culvert and ditch. And a lot of the formerly county areas that were formerly county, we have those issues. And so no doubt the problem's bigger than we can afford, but this is just one option.
Thank you.
Councilmember Draper?
That was my question. You partially addressed it. Of the roads and problems similar to this around the town, is this the most urgent?
Yeah.
And why is it being given priority?
Hard to say. It would take pretty comprehensive effort to look at all the areas. We have other.
Well, I've seen several that look worse to me, but I'm no expert.
Right.
But I'm just wondering why this one is being given priority when there are others that seem equally bad or worse,
Right.
For years.
Yeah.
Mr. Rust?
Yes. The reason why this is given priority is because this has come through the risk manager. Somebody has tripped and fallen out here several times. We believe this is the best course of action to alleviate that. Are there roads this bad or worse? Yes, there are. Again, Mike had just talked about the project that is going to start in April, which is something that has come to the council. We approved that in September, but wanted to wait through the winter to make sure that it was a very effective project. So on this, again, we can table this if you'd like. I believe this is the best course of action for you, and the best course of action is to allow this to be done by a force account, which is our staff. It's the cheapest fix for us. Gives them also the ability to do some of the work for us, get them used to doing work. So again, as we move forward, they have the ability to do some other work here. So with that, I mean, it really is, we believe that this is the best course of action, and hopefully will relieve us of some of the risks that we have out there. And again, we've received several complaints about this, and somebody, as Mike has mentioned, has slipped and fell several times.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So I'm just going to chime in on this, on the same thing that maybe that would have been nice to have in the staff report, because it does just look like somebody just called in, and so you decided to work it up when there are a lot of other areas that could. But with that said, not that we have a lot of one-time money, but this would fit into that category of hopefully once is enough to have it fixed. So any other questions or comments?
My request to speak button isn't working.
It is now. There you go.
Microphone.
My understanding, this is an expanding.
Councilmember Del Rosario. Thank you.
It's my understanding this is an expanding problem that is moving on toward Grand Avenue. Is that what you said?
No, I'd say that the condition of the road is worsening
Yes.
due to the ponding, and that will not be alleviated unless we were to fix some of the drainage in this area.
Oh, okay.
So at the very least, I think as things dry out, this is a road they're going to have to go out and patch, but like a lot of areas, it's going to get patched and repatched until the drainage issue is fixed.
Okay.
So I think, to be a more comprehensive effort to find other areas like this in the city and try to prioritize them. But I'm sure if it's, funded under general fund, it's going to outstrip, the need will outstrip our ability pretty quick. But, we're just trying to do what we can.
Sure.
This project's not really based on a prioritization, but, immediate need.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
In your discussion, you said something about the water moving toward Grand Avenue.
Generally, the drainage on the street flows in that direction and then into drainage system. General trend was from north to south.
Okay.
So even though it's close to Nelson, there's not an availability to drain
Okay.
it towards Nelson is the issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other speakers? Councilmember Thompson.
Mr. Hubert, would you give a second? Could you speak to this matter in regards to, because it's not just a road issue, it's an exposure to litigation from my understanding?
So generally speaking, governments have immunity from liability related to injuries because of a defective or a dangerous condition. Until you have notice of that dangerous or defective condition, then you have a duty to mitigate that as much as you can. That does not mean that you have to do the full drainage or you have to do a complete project, but you have to mitigate the dangerous condition as much as possible. So what that means is you've got to do something. What that means is, I don't know exactly what that means. It could be do a patch. It could be do some remedial work. It may not be necessary from a litigation standpoint or from a liability standpoint to do the whole project. But it may be cost effective to do the whole project. From a liability only standpoint, only from liability, you have an obligation to do something to mitigate the dangerous condition. That's it.
Thank you.
So would putting gravel or something to that extent, would that work?
To Mr. Huber's point, I mean, it could be as simple as putting up cones around it to keep people from parking there, but that's not really much of a fix. Temporary, pavement patch, warning sign, things like that. There's things that you could do, but in terms of an engineering fix, I think we've provided the cheapest way we can move forward and alleviate the problem on a more long-term basis. You still have a sidewalk gap there. If we were able to fund that under a grant project at some point, sidewalk, safe routes to school or something like that, to get a sidewalk closure would be ideal. But
is that a route to school, right there?
In direct path, I'm not sure, but there are schools adjacent. Have to be analyzed.
Councilmember Del Rosario and Councilmember Draper.
If we did a temporary fix on that, and then we went back to I'm sorry. If we did a temporary fix on it with the drainage pipe, and then we went back later when we have more funding and put in the sidewalk, would we have to tear out what we have done before?
No.
No. So it would just be additional too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I just wondered what your recommendation is as far as the least expensive and maybe the best fix.
Yeah, my recommendation was the A1, the placement of 2 drainage inlets with the drainage pipe and connecting to the existing drainage system, and to have the work done by city crews.
Okay, thank you.
That would be option 1 for $79,951, and $38,810 would come out of the general fund.
No, I think that would be the option if we were to take it out to bid.
So option 2.
We were looking
40,000
more in the
for option
$40,000 range.
A1. And so it would be 40,000 out of the general fund. Option B is 257,659.
Correct. That was
Am
the
I-
curb gutter sidewalk
Okay,
option,
yes.
just to give you guys an idea of
Thank you.
what a total fix would be and if we went out to bid with it.
Okay.
So I have a question for Ruth. Ruth, is there any other fund that the 40,000 could come out of when it comes to repairing the roads or streets?
No, we had a long discussion about this, and it was more appropriate for it to come out of the general fund. However, I did want to clear up, it is not coming from one-time monies. We did find budget for this. We're taking it from other maintenance accounts, so we might be short by the end of the year, but this is budgeted expenditures.
So the money is actually available,
Yes.
that's been put in the budget already?
Yes.
Are there any other projects
That I don't know. I
that
Not at
take
this time.
priority over this?
that I don't know.
Our larger priorities are the projects that you approved in September.
And a lot of those are coming from other funds.
And so the projects that we approved in September are funded?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the council?
I make a
I
motion.
move that we,
Oh,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Riley, there is no speaker card on you, but come on down. If you,
I did have one.
you didn't have one, or
I did have one.
on item number 6?
Item number 6.
It says item number 8. Hold
I
on.
have one for 8 and 9 also.
Okay, I don't have you up here, so that's okay. You go right ahead.
Good evening, Jessica. All right. It sounds to me like the council is very big on safety of your constituents and the safety of the roads. There is an area located at Wyandotte and Myers that was pointed out, about a year ago, that has been a hole. There are no cones around it. There are no signs around it. There becomes a big pothole out of nowhere because water gets in there and the tires going over it remove the pavement and the gravel and the very temporary cheap fixes that keep happening there. And I'm a motorcycle rider and I have been through that hole on my motorcycle, and I'll tell you what, it is not fun. I have hurt my leg trying to keep my motorcycle up because I didn't realize the hole was there until you are right on top of it. I know personal family members, personal friends who have been through there and damaged their vehicles. Again, this has been for quite some time now. This was brought to the attention of some of the council members. I believe it's been, well, probably over a year now. So I think there's probably some other areas that can use fixing before something that has just came up, and probably that are a little more safety hazardous top concerns over a puddle in a roadway. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Don Rust, that intersection is on the list of projects that you approved in September. Okay. So the intersection of Wyandotte and Myers is being paved. In fact, prior to the winter, we went out there and put temporary patch there just to try to get it through the winter. So that project is one of the priorities.
So do you know when that project will actually?
April.
April.
Yep.
April. April. Just saying it again.
So I just want to,
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say for the record, and I appreciate those, the list of additional road repairs that we've identified and that will be funded. But there are so many others that have just gone by the wayside, no pun intended, for years. And because we can't fund all of the repairs, and they continue to get put on a back burner and they don't get addressed, and they are risk. there are risk factors there. And so it's just unfortunate.
Yes, and so the idea would be, let's find some new revenue somewhere, whether it's a sales tax initiative or something else. What we need is more revenue. If we had more revenue, we could do the paving that we need to do, and there's a lot of it that needs to be done throughout the city of Oroville. This just happens to be one that has been brought to our attention, that you know, we believe that this is the right fix right now. If we continue to allow the drainage, you'll have holes like you have out on Myers and Wyandotte.
Myers and Wyandotte.
So
and on
again,
D
this
Street and Lincoln Boulevard.
That's right. That's right. So I would just say that we need to find some new revenue.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, there's another speaker on item number 6. Thomas Sorensen.
Evening, everybody. Directly in front of the mural of Martin Luther King, there's a storm drain which has been clogged for at least a year. Usually when the rain comes, the water goes all the way down that whole street where the parking is available. It's always flooded and usually sits there for a couple of weeks. A lot of mosquitoes habitate that place, and it seems to be a health hazard as far as I'm concerned. If we're paying for mosquito abatement, why breed them? That's all I wanted to make people aware of that.
Okay, thank you. Tasha Levinson.
It's Burlington.
Since you are, good evening. Since you are so short of funds right now, I'm going to suggest that you put this on hold for 1 month and maybe just do cones around this and any others, and see if you can't actually then at least figure out some priorities, because right now it seems like you're operating in the dark as to what your priorities of the worst problems are. This is just one where someone has come up and the injuries have been mentioned right now. Put some cones up. You've done something, as Mr. Huber said you needed to do, and then see if you can actually set some priorities until we hopefully get some more money in. But I think otherwise you're kind of choosing fog over a whole lot of other neighborhoods that have had problems for years, and I could go out and trip on a few spaces and then call you guys and see if I could get my space to have a priority, and that's not the way you want to run your city. Thank you.
I agree. I agree.
I'd like to add something to this. We've already, it's been mentioned that there is a list of priorities, and this one is not on it because it's more recent. Many of those on the list of priorities will be repaired starting in April. Now this one, from the photos in the packet, it's pretty bad, and the holes in the road are really dangerous, and so that's our concern. It's more urgent because of the risk for people to get hurt on it. Okay.
I believe a temporary patch could be used until we look at the priority list again, and if we can find some other sources of funds. I just Attorney Huber can address it again of what exactly our options would be. Councilmember Thompson's in the queue too, but I think coming out of the gate and spending $40,000 on something that has just been reported in the last month is difficult when we do have other areas that are, I mean, if we can go out and repair that now, we can go out and repair Myers and Wyandotte. And, you know, it's an accident waiting to happen. Mr. Rust and then Councilmember Thompson.
Again, the projects that we approved in September are about $600,000, and that includes Myers and Wyandotte. This has been reported for the second time. It was reported, I believe, a year ago to the supervisor, and we didn't do anything. And if we wait long enough, it will get to $257,000, even if we make the repairs. So the suggestion here is from staff that we make this repair We do the pavement work. It's our recommendation. If the council wants to table this, that is the council's direction. So however you guys want to do this, we're more than willing to follow your direction.
I guess my question would be is why are the other priority ones then having to wait? If this one was reported a year ago, so was Wyandotte and Myers reported a year ago, and they're all waiting.
They're waiting now because of a contract that you approved in September.
Okay.
The contract, and we've worked out with the contractor to start after the rainy season.
Okay. Councilmember Thompson.
On road issues, I understand what Mr. Rust is saying in regards to, asphalt deteriorates in an exponential rate. It's not linear. Each year, 8%, 16%, 32% is how asphalt deteriorates at a very high rate. I'm glad that we have some serious road maintenance and pothole issues are going to be fixed with that. Those are projects that were approved. And my concern that, when we patch holes and we continue to go out, that does cost the city money. And the longer we wait, it costs the city even more money to fix those issues. In my opinion, if we have the money right now to at least alleviate the draining and to get this taken care of, while understanding when we go back and do these curb, gutter, and sidewalk, that it won't cost us more money to do what this is. I think it's a wise decision to spend this money now as opposed to spending some money now and then more money later, because the money will be spent long term. So we got to think long term here. So I'm in favor of the option A1.
I am too.
So make a motion.
I move that we adopt the Fog Avenue Drainage Rehab Project, Section A, which is installing drainage inlets and storm drain pipe.
Was that A or A1?
I think it's A1.
I'll second that for option A1.
For it's the $40,000 option, correct?
Yes.
That Ruth has indicated there's funds available.
Yes,
for
there's
this.
funds in the budget available for this, and I do want to add, as far as a new revenue source, the new SB1 that just went through, we are going to have an ongoing revenue source for streets.
Right.
We can't spend it on anything else, but this is the new gas tax that the state is collecting on, and we will be getting an allocation of that every year. And typically, since I've been here, that money goes into a special revenue funds, and it sits there, because you don't have the staff to man these projects. So now we have Mike, and these projects are going to get moved through. I'm really confident in it.
I'm just curious, how much is in that fund?
Well, it just started in January, so not very much. We expect to get 100,000 this year, so that's a 6-month allowance, and then they're going to let us know how much we're going to get next year. It's all based on estimates.
Okay. There was a first and a second, correct?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Goodson? I'll vote yes. All votes are in. Does anybody wish to change? Voting closed.
The motion passed. The mayor's vote is a yes, and Councilmember Hatley's as an abstain.
Moving on to item number 7, request from Stream Charter School for a fee waiver for the use of the municipal auditorium for a Ninja Warrior event. Ninja Warrior. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this? Mr. West?
I'd like to ask, my kids go to Stream, so should I abstain from this?
The conflict of interest would be if you have a financial conflict of interest. Stream is a public charter school, as I understand it. It's not a private school, is that right?
Right.
Then you would not have a financial conflict of interest. So you're okay. If you want to recuse yourself, you can, but
I'm very biased obviously I love the school, so.
Well, my understanding, there were a lot of schools, so Stream is just the applicant.
Oh, is that true?
So, would you like to come up and say a little bit about the event and what happened? Well, every now and then it's nice to have somebody burn a few minutes on something nice that happened in our community with our kids.
All right.
So raise it up and speak loud.
I'll do my best. This is actually an event that is citywide for the schools, Oroville City Districts, included through Ishian Central, Palermo District. Brian Capel, superintendent over there, is actually one of the people who really got this initiated. Thermalito School District's involved as well. The Ninja Warriors came out in December and visited as motivational speakers. They're the people you see on TV if you ever watch the show. It's literally the only show I watch on TV. I enjoy it. So they came out, and the schools all set challenges for students, and we thought they were pretty tough challenges to meet. Our own school, we asked that over a 3-month period, students would need to have 100% attendance, 95% of assignments turned in on time, and a reading log completed and turned in on time each week. And across the city, the different districts, different schools set different challenges to their students. And surprisingly, maybe it shouldn't have been surprising, but more than 50% of the students challenged met the challenge and met the goals. And so it was kind of an overwhelming number of students that responded. So the promise through the challenge was that the Ninja Warriors would come back to town, and now we've set it for the week of April 9th, but they would come back to town then and run all of the students who met the challenge through one of their obstacle courses. So originally it was going to be a practice course that they were going to run the students through. The company that provides all of the equipment to the television show had made an offer to us that they would come in, drastically reduce their rate for use of their equipment if we wanted to come in and have the students run through their equipment, the actual stuff like you see on TV, just kind of a scaled down version. We won't have water, sorry, but we'll have big airbags. But anyway, they're dropping their rate from $23,000 for the week to $5,000 for the week for the equipment. So they're offering that for the students. They did ask if we could run an afternoon and evening event and charge people to help pay off the cost of the equipment. But so there will be opportunity for people who didn't meet the challenge to come in and buy an opportunity to run through the obstacle course with the ninjas. They'll be around for meet and greets and such. But for students, it's a free event for students that met that challenge that had been set before them.
So now he's being really polite. So what happened, I mean, your anticipated challenge, and Councilmember Draper can probably appreciate this as a retired teacher, the anticipated challenge participation rate was a guesstimate lower than that number, and I think it's even higher overall in the school districts of about 70%.
Correct.
So what ended up happening is a one-day event for these ninjas to come back has now turned into a 3-day event. And this says a lot about the kids in our community. And so now, unfortunately, they're financially struggling. They were almost going to have to cancel this event because they didn't know how they were going to afford to pay the ninjas, and to recoup for a 3-day event, let alone, a 1-day event, let alone a 3-day event. So certainly I'm hoping the community can come together and help, support this event because, 50-60% of the area schools that participated are all getting to come through this for free. And like you said, they're going to open it up. The anticipated evenings, the 3 evenings that they're going to be here, anybody can come with their, adults and kids alike. So I'm hoping it's really successful because you guys really put a lot of effort into that.
Thank you.
And so, but anyway, that's why they're here, and that's why the municipal auditorium, just in case it rains, and the kids, I guess it's a big enough venue in there. And based on the fee and guidelines that the city has set, the most they can ask for is a 50% reduction because they're a nonprofit, and that's why charter school is on the application.
Right. And it's this will be the first time this has happened in the country. They're actually they want to use us as a test market to then move to the big cities. So it's kind of a reverse of what usually happens.
And it all happened in Oroville.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
That right? So thank you. Thank you for doing that. Yeah. And does anybody have any questions or comments?
I'd like to make a motion that the council authorize the 50% waiver request in the amount of $1,460 that meets the city's park waiver fee waiver policy.
I gladly second.
First and second. Voting's open. Mine's a yes. All votes are in. Voting closed.
The motion passed with the mayor's vote as a yes.
Thank you. That's going to be a fun event. Item number 8, we do have speakers. Art requirement, ordinance number 1798, 2790 Feather River Boulevard. Staff report, Mr. Russ?
Yes, real quick. Basically, the applicant, Mr. Johnson, had done a building there, and as part of the building, after he had applied for the application to do this, there was an art and public places ordinance that we had put in place in October or in 2013. The date is in the staff report. And basically, this had to go back and forth or back to the Arts Commission. The Arts Commission has made a recommendation to actually have Mr. Drum pay a little bit more money. The item here is, though, just up the street, we had done a very similar project. They added some ornate or additional projects to their wrought iron fence, and we approved that project. I think this is of similar improvements, similar art. I just think it is appropriate. Staff is recommending that Mr. Johnson has paid enough, and let's move forward and get his building opened, and then that's the staff's recommendation. So really happy to answer any questions on this. This may be a complicated issue because, again, this is arts in public places. It's required as part of a non-residential project, and again, he has done art. There are some photographs that show what he's done. And again, remember, art is subjective. So there you go. That's what I have for you, and willing to answer any questions for this.
So
I believe Mr. Johnson is in the room also.
he is. So the question is, the art in public places happened during him building this? After
The Arts in Public Places ordinance was approved by the council, he applied for the building. So it was after. So it was, this is a requirement. The Arts in Public Places fee is a requirement. But as you can see the breakdown, all of the costs that he has incurred, again, I believe Mr. Johnson has provided enough. Again, this is very similar to a project just up the street from his project.
Right.
So
Well, I think the wrought iron gate is a piece of art.
that's how we looked at the previous project just up the street, was
Right.
that it was a piece of art. So
Councilmember Del Rosario.
I serve on the board.
the Arts Commission.
I serve on, is my mic?
It's on now.
Thank you. Thank you. I serve on the board that rejected this, and the reason that we rejected it is because we're setting a precedent that a fence now is a piece of art. And that means somebody could put up a chain link fence and say, hey, this is a piece of art that I've added. And we were worried about that particular item. We approved the rooster, but not the fencing.
Anybody on the dais wish to speak? We do have a couple of speakers. Jerome.
Jerome Johnson, 2790 Feather River Boulevard. Thank you, Mr. Russ. Going back to what Mr. Russ said, when I applied for this building permit, thank you. When I applied for this building permit, the Arts Commission was in the infancy. So there was really no criteria. But I understand where your council member's coming from, because I prolonged the application to the arts board. But in my thought process, the fence I put up, the roosters, the chickens on the fence, added a nice touch to the area. Probably, maybe the best touch to the area. Down the street it says, on Feather River Boulevard, the gateway to Oroville. That's a very good representation to your gateway. Thank you.
Councilmember Thompson.
I just appreciate it when community citizens take pride in what they own and improve the way our city looks. And so I'm definitely going to vote in favor of this.
We do have another speaker, Bobby O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So, I wouldn't believe I'd see the day I agreed with Mr. Rust. But I do agree with Mr. Rust. I do, however, disagree with Councilmember Del Rosario. This should have never left the Arts Commission. They should have approved this right away. They set precedents the day they approved the facility up the street with the fence. That was the precedence that the Art Commission set. So why this left Arts Commission and has to come to you guys, I don't know. Also seeing that there was a lot more than just a fence. This gentleman could have put a chain link fence or something nasty, ugly, like, you know, green slotted gates or something. It could have been pretty bad looking, but Mr. Johnson does a lot in and for this community. I don't know who knows him or doesn't. I get around town quite a bit. I know Mr. Johnson through some business dealings and seeing him in the community. I know that he is very involved in his neck of the woods, so to speak, his area of the community. He puts a lot of time and effort into his properties and his surroundings, and he takes pride in what he does. This is another instance that the mayor spoke on not so long ago on why businesses who are here or who want to come in are getting haggled on issues when they're trying to make a difference in town. So I think that this is a no-brainer, no questions asked. I think this should be passed, and thank you.
Gladly.
I move that we accept the Arts Commission recommendation approving the ornamental weather vane and chicken cutouts and as artwork.
I'll second that.
If I can be real clear.
Yeah, real clear, because they're requesting that you pay more money.
So staff's recommendation, it should be, and I apologize, there's no or in between. It's one or the other. And we really think that the best process here is to approve this and not ask Mr. Johnson for another almost $800.
So
it's the staff recommendation that we are suggesting.
All right.
And that Mr. O'Reilly apparently agrees with me on.
Let me make that amendment. I move that for the staff recommendation to approve the ornamental iron fencing, chicken cutouts, and rooster weather vane as exceeding the 1% art in public places Oroville beautification policy requirements.
And I'll second that again.
And I love roosters.
There's a first and second, and voting will be open momentarily. There it goes. My vote is a yes. All votes are in.
The motion passed with the mayor's vote as a yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, moving on to item number 9, consider a professional service agreement with William Berry Campaigns to conduct an opinion survey regarding a special or general sales tax initiative. We do have speakers on this, and I think William Berry is here this evening. I've received many emails. Once I searched his name in my email box, it goes back like since I've been the mayor. So he reached out to us as a city, seeing that we, a couple years ago when we had it on the initiative, and again recently. So I ran it by Mr. Rust and Mr. Huber, and I said, why don't we put this on the agenda? And he's here to speak, which you can come up. Answer any questions. Mr. Rust, would you like to speak to this at all, or do you want Mr. Berry? Mr. Berry.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
You've got the floor.
Good evening. I'm William Berry. I run WBC. We're a campaign and communications firm, and we work with local governments in California to judge the viability of tax and bond measures before they're placed on the ballot. We've worked with the City of Willows, the Gridley Biggs Hospital District, Butte County Library Commission, Live Oak Unified Schools, Shasta College, Sierra College, about 100 local governments. And what the opinion survey does is it tries to gauge the real, how voters truly feel about a tax measure. Should it be a 2/3 or a 50%? Should a tax measure be for roads, or should it be for emergency services? Does there need to be a sunset clause on it? Our opinion surveys are 15 minutes in length on the telephone. They are a demographic, it's a demographic and geographic match of your likely voters in Oroville. The margin of error for each question is about 6%. So what we'll do is we would test the ballot language. We would also test what programs voters would want the money to go for. As I said, roads versus emergency services. Most cities and unified school districts that go for a bond measure or go for a tax measure take a public opinion survey just to make sure that what they're putting on the ballot is what voters want. And if it's not, it can either be changed or not placed at all. And we, in our opinion survey for the Butte County Library Commission to see if there were public support for a tax measure, there wasn't. And they didn't go forward with one. Placing a tax measure on the ballot takes a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources. And so an opinion survey will help you make really just wise decisions. It's part of a roadmap. Any questions or?
See,
I'm sorry, what happened there? Wait, keep talking.
Sure.
Yeah.
So an opinion survey is part of the information that city councils use in deciding whether or not to place a measure on the ballot and what type and what it should be for, and what other elements would need to be in the tax measure for voter approval. I'd be happy to take any questions or.
I just heard something mimic. I thought I heard some. Okay. Councilmember Del Rosario.
No, I'm sorry. That was from before.
Councilmember Thompson.
Can you clarify for me what exactly is entailed in this estimate?
Sure. It's 300 completed phone calls.
So 300 phone calls?
Right. Completed 300 completed interviews, probably thousands of phone calls. It includes the sample match of who we're going to be calling, so that the likely registered voters. It includes the cross-tabulation reports, so we can break down to you the support and oppose level by 1 million different demographics, including neighborhood, sex, age. It includes, let's see what else it includes. Primarily it. So the biggest cost by far and away is to complete 300 15-minute interviews. Some will be bilingual, for the Spanish speaking, but the biggest cost is the 300 interviews.
So this estimate specifically is for the interviews?
This is for the producing the public opinion survey, which includes the interviews, also includes the sample size and the data work to produce the cost tabulation reports, which is the breakdown of the survey results.
Vice Mayor Goodson.
So, Measure R was put on the ballot in 2016. And I believe the general consensus of the public was that they wanted this to be a special tax as opposed to general.
Sure.
I think that was the main concern. And then they also asked for specificity. They wanted the monies earmarked. And so, knowing that, how would you approach the survey? And then number
Sure,
two,
yes.
you had mentioned that for something to be put on the ballot, it's costly. But it's our understanding that to put this initiative, whether it's special or general, would be approximately $2,000. And your survey, I believe, you quoted a figure of approximately $20,000.
Surveys between 16 and 18, depending upon
16 and 18,000.
Depending upon the length of the survey, which is probably a moderate, in the middle in terms of price range. I'm not sure that voters vote against tax measures because it's a general or it's a specific.
Our Oroville residents did.
Is that right?
Yes, they did, and they're here.
Well, and I would say, the good people that showed up this evening, are they a representative of the average voter?
Well, it would seem so, since Measure R was defeated.
It would, but what were the reasons why it was defeated?
And that's the whole purpose of the survey, to find out if
Right.
we were to go to the ballot.
Would they rather the money have gone to the potholes that I heard about? Do they think that there's enough police officers? No. Would they rather have the money go for potholes and roads and streets or police?
The public safety was, and it still is, our main issue.
And I would push back a little bit that figuring out the public opinion in a scientific manner. I think I passed out the protocols that are used. A lot of people, and I think it's tough. I know I couldn't predict the turnout and how people would vote in the city of Chico. Butte County Library Commission was going to put a tax measure on the ballot for libraries until we did a survey for them and said, can't happen, can't do it. An opinion survey will also allow you to prioritize if you get new revenues. Again, I heard new revenues about streets and roads. Where does that fall on the list of priorities as compared to parks or compared to maintenance? It'll help you prioritize voters' priorities. So we would absolutely test the question in several ways. One, we would test the ballot language for a specific tax measure versus a general tax measure. And we'd also ask them point blank, what were your reasons for voting no on Measure R if you did? And we'll see if they can give us in an open-ended question, if they can let us know why they voted against it. Does that answer your question?
Councilmember Draper, and then Councilmember Thompson.
Well, pardon me. Of the four bullet items here, what tax percentage will the registered voters of Oroville support?
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't scientific, but last time it was probably 0.5%. We were hopeful of 1%. But on these remaining three, what type of tax they would want special? Should the tax measure include a sunset clause? Yes, it has to. And what are voters' priorities for new funding? Public safety. So we really pretty much have a handle on that kind of thing. Now, my other comment is we're already paying a consultant to advise us on pursuing a cannabis tax.
Sure.
So it would seem like the logical thing to do to have that consultant segue into this and do it as well, that it would be less expensive that way. That's what I'm wondering.
You could absolutely. I don't know the specifics of the other person's contract.
Don, do you remember the name of the other consultant for that? SCI. Thank you.
Would 50% plus one of the voters have voted for Measure R if it was a 0.5%? would they have voted for it if it was a utility tax or a partial tax as opposed to a sales tax? Those are types of questions that in a tax measure, when the small percentages matter, 44% versus 51%, knowing if that 7% of the voters matter, if it could, certain things will move them from no to a yes or undecided to a yes, I think is important. You're not going to win overwhelmingly a tax measure based upon your past Measure R. And so are there small pieces of information that you can glean from an opinion survey that will help you make a better choice of what to put in front of the voters? Again, I don't know. My hometown's Chico. I certainly can't tell you how voters would feel on a bevy of issues. If you think that you have that, perfect. You certainly do not need to do an opinion survey. But again, could you gauge what percentage would vote yes for Measure R if it was a half a cent versus 1 cent, or other options? So,
Councilmember Thompson?
I know that definitely I'm one that's interested to know what the community wants. My concern is, I guess, in regards to cost effectiveness. Maybe my question right now would be, what would the cost be potentially to have a public forum? Maybe Mr. Russ can answer that. If we did some kind of a public forum, invited the community to come out and ask them, handed out a survey there where they could fill that out. Do we?
Well, you have agreed to a contract where you're going to have a public forum regarding the cannabis. So
we could actually add another paper into that.
We could, but I think what Mr. Berry is talking about is something a little bit different than a community engagement meeting where you hand out a flyer and have somebody circle things. What he's doing is in a private, and not him personally, but 5 or 7 people are going to get on the phone, call somebody, and on a one-on-one ask very specific questions on what, and again, in the staff report it talks about that. Can you hand out something at a meeting? Sure, and it may give you an idea. The real question is, do you want to do that, a specific survey? Again, the other consultant that you're under contract could do the same thing for you. I don't know, we haven't discussed that with them, so this would be something new that would have to be added to it.
Theirs is for the cannabis, though. This is for
that's
general.
For the cannabis, and again, I think at the February 20th meeting, we talked about that you may want to have them do the same thing that Mr. Berry is trying to do here. So I think it's your choice. There is going to be additional cost whether you want Mr. Berry to do this or you want SCI to do something similar, not on cannabis, but on something different, like a Measure R. So Mr. Berry is talking specifically about doing something on Measure R, or like Measure R. What I said at the February 20th meeting at State Theater is you've hired that consultant. You could use that consultant to do the same thing here, but it's the choice of the council. That you may, if the choice is to separate the 2 items, this may be a way to separate the 2 items.
Councilman Thompson, and passing out a questionnaire at a town forum is a great idea. The difference between that and an opinion survey is that the people that we speak with randomly. The registered voters who are likely to vote, and the reason why a survey is scientifically accurate is that every registered voter in Oroville has a random chance of being one of the people selected for us to call. So it's not people who are motivated to go to a meeting, or it's not people who are motivated to come out and support one thing or another. It's people who are just random. And that's what gives the survey scientific backing, but it also allows for the people who aren't actively involved, which is probably most of the voters. So that would be the difference between a community forum where you pass out a survey, which is a fine thing to do for anecdotally. A little bit of a difference with the opinion survey.
Yeah, one thing I probably would just disagree in regards to effectiveness is that people that come out to a forum and whatnot usually are very active in the community. We have a tight-knit community that talk. I think that's one
absolutely.
of our strengths.
No, I didn't mean to say that you didn't.
And regarding that, people talk misinformation or correct information, and so people who are coming out typically are pretty active in talking.
Oh no, I agree with you. Yeah. My only point was that most people are not that active.
Right.
My only concern about using the other consultant originally had to do with that they market themselves as a cannabis, that they help the city get cannabis stuff instilled, and I think that would be their main priority versus a general sales tax. That was my concern originally. Councilmember Rust, and then Councilmember Del Rosario.
What if we remember what was in the staff report on the 20th is that they actually had done a lot of stuff for Feather River Rec and Park District, Chico Area Recreation District, Paradise Recreation District, both the mosquito abatement districts here, and somebody else. Again, those were only tax measures, had nothing to do with cannabis. They just happened to have this niche now of working with cities that are interested in. And again, remember,
You are correct. You are correct.
and my last point would be this: one of the things that we're asking them to do is a ballot measure for a sales tax on cannabis. So it is a sales tax, but again, it's however you guys feel about this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Oh, Councilmember Del Rosario, did you want to ask him a question?
Yes, I did. I'm sorry. No. I find it sad that we're thinking of spending $16,000 to $18,000 to find out if we should or shouldn't put a measure on the ballot. And you said it's 350-minute interviews on the phone. I don't think you're going to find 300 people in Oroville that will talk to you for 50 minutes on the phone.
It's 15 minutes.
15,
right.
Okay.
I won't find anyone to talk to me on the phone for 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I misunderstood.
15, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
So we just spent how much on the last consultant at the last meeting? 40,000.
Yeah.
And so now we're questioning whether or not we could spend 16 for the same for a general. Okay, moving on to speakers. Sherry Bunker.
Good evening, Council. I have an issue with this. While I understand there's questions, I think everybody on this council and in this room understands why the Measure R didn't pass. When you stand there and sit there and say, if you don't think that we won't use that to keep us from going bankrupt, you're mistaken. Obviously, it's not a protected source of income. If you do a specialized tax, I have a feeling it probably would have passed. My other issue is you're going to spend $264, give or take, per 300 calls to do this survey for an hour. $264 for an hour. That's 4 calls. Think about that. And you're grumbling because you're going to spend $40,000 to fix safety hazards?
Bobby O'Reilly.
Can I ask a question before my time starts?
No, it's already started.
Okay. So, I don't know how many people in Oroville use phones. Like, I don't know if they use landline phones to call or cell phones or what, but there's kids that answer, whatever. I don't think you're going to find, there's 19,000 people in Oroville, even less than that registered voters. I don't think you're going to find 300 completed 15-minute phone calls of people who want to stay on a phone and chit-chat, because when those calls call me or anybody that I know, we play with them a little bit and we hang up. So that's my opinion. That's a lot of money, $16,000 to $18,000 for something we already know. You guys already sat up there and said yourselves, we already know these things. We use social media. Social media is a powerful beast. We have people come out in flocks to attend city council meetings when there's items like cannabis on an agenda, and then we had the sales tax agenda item right after that, and you had the public's opinion. People post all day long on Facebook about the sales tax, about the tax issue. You know what the public wants. We know that. We don't need to spend $18,000, or as Sherry said, $264 an hour because that's what it boils down to, for a company to tell us what our constituents want. If you just pay attention to your constituents and you listen to your constituents, you know what they want. It's in black and white. It's in plain English. Thank you.
August Lincoln.
Mayor, City Council, I believe before you ask the citizens of the city of Oroville to vote for a tax increase, that they be provided the following: a total tax revenue broken down by category. How much money do you receive from property taxes? How much money you receive from utility taxes? And all other tax revenue. We already are paying, with your own form, electricity, we pay a 5% utility tax, 5% gas utility tax, 4.5% wired telephones, 4.5% wireless telephone, 4.5% prepaid, 5% for satellite TV, and 5% for water. So where's all this money at? Do you know? Have you ever seen a revenue? Have the staff provided you revenue of how much tax money is coming in? Probably not.
Yes, yes.
Probably not. So you went out and asked the citizen. I can tell you why it failed the last time. I was in front of Walmart, Food Max, and Rayleigh's, educating the public on what you guys didn't provide them. Utility taxes. If this should go before the citizens again, if you put it on the ballot, I'll be standing in front of the stores again, educating them. All it is education. Know where your money is. Obviously you don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Russ, and then Ruth, I might ask you some questions here because I know we've been provided this information more than once.
Yes.
More than once.
So this is provided annually to you. The utility user tax generates, before we annexed, about $1.6 million. When we annexed Area A, it added about another 300,000, so we're almost at $2 million. But all of this information is in your annual budget. Ruth can speak to any more clarity if she needs to.
So in the clarification of this, the taxes that we get, the clarification of this, does it come to more money than our general budget needs to survive?
No.
So the reality is we can talk about a special tax all day long, and we can talk about giving it to a special pocket all day long. But the reality is we've got so much special allocated money that we can't spend. And we don't have enough money in the general budget to pay our bills. So we can talk about this all day long, even if it's a special tax. As Sherry Bunker said, if it's a special tax and it goes to fund public safety and we can't pay to keep our lights on, that's just the way it's going to end up. And doing a survey is not a ridiculous idea. We just hired another consultant to do the same thing about cannabis, how to make that pass in our backyard. So whether we combine them or do them separately, we have to find out how we can make this pass and how we can supplement the general fund. And it's not that we're collecting tax money from utility tax and water tax and phone tax and putting it in our pockets. That's not what's happening here. And we get this information every year, and for somebody to say that we're not spending the city's money correctly, I beg to differ with you. I've sat up here for 7 years, and these council members, every one of them, whether we get along or not, we go through this budget. Some of us go home in tears. I mean, we just got another new one. These people work their finger to the bones, and there's not enough employees in here. You got people leaving right and left because we can't continue to work them 3 jobs at a time. And it's not fair. And there's more people that wish to speak. And Mr. Berry would like to make a clarification, and there's more speakers.
Respectfully, just one quick clarification.
Come up to the microphone.
Just one quick clarification. The cost probably isn't $264 an interview. It's probably closer to the $50 to $52 range. So just that one clarification.
Well, I understand. Let's not get into the weeds over this. His estimate, it's about the man hours that it takes to get that done. And so anyway, we don't need to regress on that. Eric Smith.
Madam Mayor, Council, again, thank you for the privilege to speak to you on another issue. I'm one of those geeky people that answer surveys. And so just FYI for your information, OCSD just conducted one of these a few months back, to which I had the pleasure of spending 15 or 20 minutes being surveyed. And of course it caught my eye because I sat on OCSD's board. And I thought, when did this come around? They're seeking a bond measure to to deal with our aging infrastructure in the school districts here in Oroville. It's a real issue. So that being said, just information. Your clock's not running, because otherwise I'll talk forever. Keeps me on point. That being said, I just think it's just information for all of you that there's probably 300 people out there that will answer the survey. But just thinking in the back of your mind, are the folks kind of weary, of surveys? Information's power. I'm an information geek. As you know, I always come here with, I print out your agenda, I'm reading through it, paying attention. And so it's very, very vital to making good, strong, quality decisions. I just think in that survey piece, looking at what's already been surveyed in our city, if that makes sense. So OCSD's done it, and I don't know what they've spent. You might want to look into, talk to Penny, the superintendent of schools there at OCSD, see who they hired, were they happy with the results of the survey, whatnot. That might just information, check that out before you make this final call. That being said, since SCI was brought up, and it was an issue near and dear to my heart, the consultant firm for the marijuana, I don't know if you could segue somehow this, because SCI supposedly is an equal opportunity employer in that they don't have a horse in the race per se, although you'd think they do by reading their website. That being said, they did go to Eureka a couple of years ago. The Eureka City Council, after 2 sessions, one private with the council, one public, decided not to go with the pot deal. Just information, just interesting. I talked with the city chief of police, and he was very candid, very informative gentleman, and it was a very passionate issue, as it has been with us here in our city. But so SCI, they came alongside the city, and they thought, you know what? Too big of a lift, too many issues, and so the city council, I think, to their credit, decided to move away from that issue. But just in again, looking at the issues, can you combine these 2 items and agendas? I don't know that. I think it just requires, more information, more consultation. But, I think the folks, what I'm hearing out here is just be smart with the limited resources you have. And then, so if you're going to execute something like this, make sure that, boy, you're getting all the bang for your buck possible, and that it's going to make sense in the end. I don't have a dog in the hunt. I love surveys. I love information. I'd spend money all day long on just, input. So you make smart choices. So check out OCSD, see what they did. Are they happy? I don't think they're going to move with the bond measure. That's a heavy lift. Here I was a former, trustee member. And it went like this. If we added $50 to your property tax, would you vote for it? If you added, what about 25? What about 10, 5? Where's your, at what point can we move you? So that's kind of how it went on the survey.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Good evening. I think that we have kind of a miscommunication or misunderstanding. The reason that we had to pay a pot consultant is because it's completely uncharted waters. Nobody besides a few states that aren't very local to us have experienced this. So we need somebody to help guide us. This is a phone call that, and this is just my suggestion, but I think part of the question is would 0.5% or 1% fly again if we were to try it again? I think from your Facebook post that is maybe why you're needing this kind of guidance. And my thought process is that this is something a citizen group could help with. We could just, create a group of, 5 or 10 people that volunteer to do this. We submit the questions for you to approve or not approve, and or negotiate, and then we make phone calls. That's just my solution.
Thank you, Stephanie. Steve Christensen.
Mayor, council, staff, thank you for letting us speak. I was very interested in Measure R and studied very thoroughly. There were quite a few reasons why it failed, and one of them was we people in the private sector sometimes have it hard to understand why so much money has to be spent on consultants. And that's one of the reasons it failed.
That's it? You got 2.5 minutes left. Thank you. Tasha? Hey, come on. I hear somebody's stomach growling up here, so, we got to make light every now and then.
Thank you. I'll try and use less than my 3 minutes, too. SCI is what gave you the benefit assessment district for the Parks and Recreation. They deal with a whole lot of different ballot measures and dealing with tax type issues. So you could probably expand with them to get a better bang for your buck if you feel like you need them. I do think Stephanie's idea in a community as small as ours probably is actually a really good idea. And I'm going to, I actually wrote a letter that happened to get published today in the paper, go right along with what Linda said, to say that you need money in the general fund. You have a lot of money that you can't spend. You don't have money where you need it. And this earmarking and special funds that tie you up are part of the problem. That we've just got a huge problem in our country with this, where we've got to get general fund money and then vote people in or out depending on how well they do spending it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Tasha. Mary Barr?
Hi, good evening. I am for a tax initiative. The question I guess I would have that you might not answer at the beginning here is who would be writing that tax initiative to be presented to the voters? According to Measure R, there was trouble with the voters, and that's why they put it down. So it really is how you write an initiative and explain to them thoroughly as to why you need it. I would agree that spending $40,000 for a pot consult is quite a bit of money, because you're going to be changing your municipal code, which basically says no pot. And so you do have to, and so they're also going to come in and try and change the hearts and minds of the citizens so that they would approve that and not come back with a referendum maybe next year pulling what you put. So it really is how you write the initiative and who's going to write the initiative for your city. Thanks.
Thanks. All right, is there any other speakers on item number 9? Bill Bynum?
Yes. I wasn't going to speak, but just listening to everything, it seems to me that this is really important, that you pass a measure that garners some more revenue. It's really important. And I agree with the gentleman who was up here speaking that it needs to be scientific. I don't think you can get a group of citizens and just make phone calls and call it good. I don't believe that. I think you need a scientific survey, and I think it's worth the bang for the buck that if you get something passed, I think that outgo of 16 to 18,000 if it brings in $1 million, is worth it. And I think you shouldn't try to shortchange it. You should do it right. You should do it scientifically. I worked on Measure R. I went door to door. It was tough. And I think if we had done more scientific research up front, we might have been successful. We might have known more about what we were doing. And we had a good group, and we had a lot of people, and we weren't able to get it done. So I would go with a professional.
Thank you, Mr. Bynum. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on item number 9?
I just have a question. I appreciate what you just said. Professional services is very important. I'm wondering, this price, of course, is negotiable. The $20,000, I believe. I don't see him. I don't know if he's.
I think he's just around the corner.
He's just around the corner.
I didn't see him leave, but
that's my question.
We can ask.
Thank you.
Also, if I could just throw one little caveat, you have until June 29th to get all this done.
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Del Rosario and then Councilmember Thompson. Okay, Councilmember Thompson.
It would just be good to know before we pulled the trigger on this how much SCI would charge us for the similar scientific survey.
I don't know the answer to that question. Mr. Legrone and myself are going to have a conversation with SCI tomorrow just to get the ball rolling. We can ask that question. It would have to come back, and we may be able to send that through an email to let you guys know what that is. But if you put it off, you can't take action until the 20th.
If I could chime in, Madam Mayor, I sit on the OC ESD school board, and we spent $15,000 on the survey, and it was with Matsum and ISOM, I believe, another company. And what came back was a very detailed presentation from that company regarding what is the likelihood of the passage of a bond for the school district. And what we decided based upon the information that was provided is that at this time it's not a good time to move forward on presenting a ballot, not a measure, but a bond. So there are other companies out there that do the same similar thing, but it was good, useful information to help make that decision. And 16 to 18,000 isn't too far from the 15.
Councilmember Hatley.
Thank you. The first thing we have to do is get the numbers from staff to go out and talk to people and say, will you vote for a measure here that a tax, and whether it sunsets or however it's worded. The work has been done. The chief did it the last time on Measure R. He knows what a half, a quarter, half, 3/4, and 1% looks like. And he had it broken down to what that would, basically what that would buy, okay? And so, to me, right now, it seems like we have to, as a council, before we put it out to the people of this community and say, we need this for a revenue source, and we do, there's no question about it. But if staff comes back and says, you know what, to get you to this point of what the people really want, a half a cent's not going to do it, 3/4 is not going to do it, 1% may not. I don't know. I don't know that number. So for us to go out here and all of a sudden say, well, let's just grab a number and throw it at you, I'm not for that. What I want to know is, tell me right now what, well, not right now, but bring back the information that says, you know, really and truly to get the people what they want. And if it's public safety, because we already know a general fund tax, and I'm telling you right now, just like I told you the last time, I will not vote for a general fund tax. I just will not. I want to know where my dollar is going to be sent, and that's just me. right, wrong, or indifferent, but that's the way I look at it. But if it's specific, and I know that when I go into the store and I put my money down, that if it's for public safety, excuse me, if it's for public safety, I know that I'm paying for that, and I get that, and I understand we have to because of just the cost of doing business. So, but I don't want to be charged 1% if 0.5% is all they really need from me. But on the other hand, I don't want to be charged 0.5% and expect something from that 0.5%, and then them come back and go, sorry, it should have been 1%. No. You tell me up front what it's going to be, and I will tell you whether I will pay that or not. It's just like buying anything. If you're going to sell me something and show me that it's worth what I'm paying you for. And if I don't think it's worth it, I'm going to vote no. If I think it's worth it, I will vote yes and pay those prices. So to me, right now, I doubt if anybody sitting up here or in this room right now can tell me exactly how much percentage we need, whether it's a quarter, half, 3/4, 1%, 5%, I don't know. And if staff has that, they haven't given it to me. And I don't think they have it yet. I think we really need to sit down as this group right here and say, bring us these numbers, and then we can come to you and say, for this much money, this is what you get. If you want that, that's what it's going to cost you. And if it's not what you want, then we can't provide it. I mean, if you want more than that, I'm sorry, we can't provide it unless you want to go more. And if we can provide it for less, you need to know that too. So that's where I stand on this. I want to make sure that we know exactly how much we're talking about and what it's going to be spent on.
Councilmember Draper?
Well, that's a good point, Councilman Hatley. And I would like to add that we received an email from Ruth Wright recently that delineated how much money would come in from 1/4 to 1/2 to 3/4% to 1% in tax revenue. So she has done that work. I'm sure she'd be glad to resend that email.
I think what he's asking though is, what do we need? What a percentage do we need to cover the deficit that we have? And wow, that's a really good question, because we do have a $22 million unfunded pension liability, but I'm not sure that a sales tax initiative would even go towards that. So that's a hard question to answer.
So my button's not working, so I would like to add to that, and then Councilmember Hatley, you can be in the queue afterwards. One of the things, the last time we had a sales tax measure, Councilmember Hatley made the same statement, that if it were a general, he wasn't going to vote for it. And we just sat up here, and you heard Ruth, and we have the new budget, it's out online, that we can't afford to continue to go after special taxes. Now, here's what's going to happen if you don't think this would happen. So here you have, we're already at what I just asked Ruth the other day, 68-70% of our public safety, of our fund dollars, go to public safety right now. That is an unsustainable amount of money to go to one entity in the entire city. And I'm going to use this in comparison to what Councilmember Draper and Del Rosario, they sit on a board for the Homeless Coalition and the affordable housing. So when you sit on those boards, it's basically, even when you do loans, there's a ratio of what your allowable money for rent can be, or allowable money for one of your largest expenditures, which is usually your house. You can't get loans with it. You can't buy a new car with it. And if you do, you're buying on loans and stuff. If you get a car and you're paying 50-60% in your mortgage, you're going to be paying a high interest rate for that. It's like our house payment, our rent is 70%. We've got 30% left over for everything else in the city. And now we're talking about doing a special tax to give them more money. I've heard council members sit up here and say, and we're not taking a dime away from public safety. So you're telling this is what this will look like. If you give them a special tax and we don't take anything away from them, we're still not able to turn our lights on one day a week at City Hall. That's what a special tax will do. The other side of it is you do the special tax and we reduce it down to where it's a doable, so we reduce it down to 65%. It's still basically going to funnel back in the general fund. And then somebody's going to say, well, you lied to us. So you have to understand that this is how this is going to work. Call it what you want, but we're broke inside City Hall. We're working 4 days a week. Mr. Rust has been wearing 3 hats for 3 years. 6 for 3 years. You've got Chief Legrone wearing 3 hats. We're done. We're done. So call it what you want. Special tax public safety, we can't afford to continue a 70% paying rent, 70%, and starving our family. Just can't continue.
So,
Councilmember, yes.
So what I hear you saying is, let's just say hypothetically, if we if we were to, let me just throw out 1%, then I think what I hear you saying is 50, half of that would go to public safety and half of that would be put in the general fund to equalize that.
And see, if we had the magic wand and everybody voted for that, but the reality is, it's like Mr. Bynum said, it's not time for us to, I mean, doing it mathematically and doing it systematically, what will work? Where's the threshold in our community? And for people like Mr. Lincoln and Mr. Christensen, they need to sit here with our budgets and understand that there is no money left. I don't care if we get it from utilities and gas tax. Everybody gets it. I can't give you back your utility tax right now, Mr. Christensen. I can't do it. But maybe 6 years from now we can. And we had that discussion. But right now, your community needs you to stand up for this. Bobby, you can. Is it a question?
It is.
Well,
is it a possibility to do 50% of the 1%?
But is that really what's going to pass? You have a council member saying no, and
I was told I have to come to the podium.
You do.
Is that an actual possibility that of that 1%, if a tax
yes, it can.
was
It
passed,
can be written, and this is why the consultant was here tonight to find out exactly where the threshold is.
But
with
that
the
consultant
community.
left.
Well, it doesn't. He's still on the agenda.
But he left before he could answer any more questions as to
You
what
can
his
call
company
him.
can do.
Okay, we're 3 minutes. Do you want to?
No,
So
I don't want 3 minutes.
And,
I just want to know
then,
if that's
as
a
Mr.
possibility.
Russ said, trying to go back to this other person and get them on the hook to do the surveys. We've only got to the 29th. Then we'd have to come back and come back again. We either need to make a decision and have it be 2 separate things. It's one-time money, and we need to make a decision.
Well, you guys have people that will fight for you on the 1% if you can indeed do like
But you understand, even if it's a special tax, what that means. Somewhere it's going to funnel back to the general fund. Mr. Rust.
Just a quick thought. After Paradise passed, I believe it was Measure C. They wrote it was really a general tax, though they indicated that what they were going to use it for. And it was generally to buy new police cars and a new fire engine, and they did that. And then they were conservative in their estimation of thinking they were only get around $800,000 a year, and they ended up with about 1.2 the first year. Again, a lot of that is because other people are coming through Paradise, not just the residents spending. So they ended up paving the roads.
Right.
And I was going to say this earlier, and I thought better not to, but I'm going to say it anyway. You can have a special tax for the police department, but you're also going to have to buy horses. Because that's the only way they're going to be able to get to places because your roads are falling apart.
Right.
You really need And that's, I'm not joking, I'm being actually serious. I mean, there was an example on fog on how your roads are falling apart. Do you need more police? I think somebody spoke about, and I think it was Mr. Smith maybe that spoke about what's on the TV lately. And again, the PD is stretched very thin right now. They need more revenue. That's why I think for some people need to understand the whole reason why we're talking about cannabis is to fund the police department. That's it. That's what that's for. But if you put a sales tax initiative on the ballot also, and you get both, that's bonus for you. If you get one, it's going to be good. If you get two, it'll be great. What you need, and I'm sorry I keep repeating this, is more revenue, more revenue, more revenue. And yes, we do need more revenue if you want to have better roads, better parks, more law enforcement to solve the problems that we have in Oroville.
A better quality of life for Oroville.
Yeah.
I believe that's true, and I'm even leaving, or in a couple days. I still think that's the best course of action for the city of Oroville, and I'm looking forward to you not only surviving but thriving into the future.
Councilmember Draper.
Well, I'd like to make a motion if you feel we've discussed this enough. Okay. I'd like to move that we direct staff to prepare a contract with WBC to conduct an opinion survey regarding a potential special or general sales tax initiative for the November 2018 general election.
I'll second. My vote's yes. All votes are in. Does anybody wish to change their vote?
The motion failed.
Can I make an alternate suggestion, and that's that we do a comparison of rates with the other company that's doing the cannabis and bring it back? Can we do that?
I'll second that if you're making a motion. Okay.
Is it a motion?
That's what she said.
Yes.
I mean, we're actually running out of time, so it's almost as if we need to do a comparison.
We had discussed that a couple of weeks ago, I believe. What's unfortunate is the gentleman that was making the presentation left, and so there was no negotiating power here. He took that when he left. I wish he had stayed.
Yeah, I don't. Well, we could actually direct the staff to negotiate with him.
Yeah.
All right.
To negotiate with the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
So that would be Chief Legrone, because we do need to get this moving forward one way or the other.
Madam Mayor, may I ask a question? Is there a threshold amount that you would like for this purpose, regardless of whether it's with this consultant or another consultant?
That would be the better motion then.
I mean, if you want to give authority for council to spend up to a certain amount, either with this consultant or with another one, then we need to know what that number is, and then we can go and it makes it a little difficult, but
10,000.
I was actually
right.
Yeah.
Councilmember Thompson.
And I think what Chief Legrone said, that they just did one for 15. You know, I think if we can
15.
come near to what they recently did, I don't see that as outside completely the ballpark.
15.
I won't vote yes for that. I'll vote yes for 10.
So we still need a number, or that we can move on because the motion has killed the item. So if we're going to do something different, we need to do that.
Madam Mayor, if you would like, what I can bring back on the next meeting is prices from
SCI and this one?
Yeah, and if it exceeds the amount, then
And it's for 300 surveys.
You know, I really, I only have the experience with the one company that we worked with, and they didn't tell us how many surveys they were going to do. They were just going to, you know, bring back the information. So I really don't want to, and I don't have the expertise to tell a consulting company such as this is how many surveys, because I'm not really sure.
And Mr. Barry said it would be 300 surveys. So that's all I'm bringing that up is with the SCI, you know, make sure it's comparable for the same information that Mr. Barry's contract states he was going to do.
Okay. So I have another question. Who's going to be working with the consultant, whoever that may be, to identify what those questions are?
Well, I don't believe we would let the contract. We're just bringing information back, and then the council would work with that consultant if that was the council's choice.
Okay.
Could you also give a call into the people who did the school bond?
Yes, sir, I will.
Are you still asking for a figure maximum, Chief? For
what I've heard is somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000, and of course we will try to negotiate down to the lowest possible number.
Okay, thank you.
Does that work? Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, correspondence is attached. Council and council announcements and committee reports. This time you may give a verbal report, but you don't have to. Anybody?
I'm
yes.
Requested to speak.
Go ahead.
Okay. This letter was received and placed with each council member today because it was not given in time to get with the to place with the agenda. And this is a letter to the Oroville City Council from Mark McKinnon, who is a former colleague of mine and a very well-respected person in Butte County. He's a former instructor at Oroville High School for AP English, and he taught at Butte College and was a professor there for many years until he retired last year. And I'm not going to read this whole letter. It's very well written, but essentially the gist of it is that he would like to commend the Oroville City Council members who support the controlled legal sales and distribution of cannabis within the city's boundaries. And he mentions the considerable tax revenue increase that the city would receive. And he also mentions that many of the arguments against it are not factual and are based on the anti-marijuana campaign of the 1930s that was driven by William Randolph Hearst's media empire. And he does finally conclude here that the city councilors who voted in favor of that are not advocating that anyone partake of cannabis. They are simply standing with California's legalization of the public's right to choose to use it medicinally and or recreationally. So he says that in his opinion it makes perfect sense both fiscally and morally. And the letter's from Mark McKinnon. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Goodson.
Yes, I attended a SCORE Sewer Commission meeting last week, and I was invited to speak at Ophir Elementary School for a readathon. Now, this item, it was brought to my attention that there is a building that is currently occupied on the airport property. It's approximately 6,000 square feet of space, and it's being used, but it's my understanding that rent hasn't been paid for approximately 4+ years. And so I had a discussion with Mr. Hatley, and he was a little surprised as well. So I'm hoping that, and I've asked him to partner with me for this to be an agenda item next time to have a discussion and address what that looks like.
I believe the chief can bring that back, but it's the Bentif building.
Yeah.
It's a building that the council's given action for the Butte Interagency Narcotics Task Force, if that's the right acronym. Maybe Mr. Legrone can add a little more to that.
That would be the only building out there that I'm aware of that anybody's using from the city. It's really unfortunate that this has come around to this level. The staff member that did this is probably really out of line. He knows why and what's going on there, and that this has come to the council, and I'm sorry that he don't like it, but this body took action, and this is a really frustrating thing that has just come out based on this individual. So it's the building, because he's been, I think we should talk about this later.
All right. Just wanted to be caught up to
So
date on
I'm sorry, did you say that they're not paying any rent? I thought that we had a reduced rent out there.
No, this item was brought to the council several years ago, and based upon the fact that DOJ pulled out of the task force, there was no funding for that at that time. And at that time, the Bentif was fragile economically. So we had the choice of either having an empty building sitting out there that was unused, or we were going to allow them to use it with the caveat that they pay the utilities and any minor maintenance that occurred out there, which they have been doing. We have critical infrastructure on that building that we must keep up and running. My radio system is based upon voter receivers. One of my receivers and voters is at that location. I'm not concerned about anybody doing anything to it as long as we have somebody in there and the building is secure. We're going to have to pay the power bill there one way or the other, because that piece of equipment needs to be on in order to cover that part of town with our police radios. So that's why that building ended up that way. I've told this individual numerous times that if
and I'm sorry, I'm not talking about the individual. Because I was on the council when we made the decision, but I didn't realize, I thought they were paying a reduced rent. So I just wanted to clarify that.
And just for clarity, if we have a tenant that wants that building and it's not just going to sit there empty, I will give them notice and we will get them moved in a very short amount of time.
Right. Because it was a month to month at that time.
Correct, and it still is in that type of arena.
Okay, yeah, because I remember, because I was on the council. Yes. So, Vice Mayor Goodson, are you still working? Right. Councilmember Draper, are you?
Yeah, I neglected to mention. Thank you. Are you still going, Janet?
No, I wanted to thank the chief.
Well, we don't want to thank the chief.
Right.
No, thank you, Chief Legrone. I just wanted to mention I attended the Continuum of Care homeless meeting in Chico on February 26th, and they're doing a lot of really good things and have a new director there, a woman who is in charge of facilitating things, and they're getting a lot done. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I'd like to request staff to bring back some information for us on a code of ethics for the City Council for the way that we should appropriately interact with staff members to ensure that they are treated with the respect that they deserve. And I know other cities have such handbooks or whatever you want to call them, and I think that it would be a really helpful thing for us to have as well.
I second that.
We actually have one around somewhere.
We need a new one. And
yeah, there have been some policies related to how items get on the agenda, and some policies related to giving direction to staff. But we can certainly bring back some examples of. Before we do, let me ask if this is okay, because you've got two people that want it on the agenda. We'll put it on the agenda. There is a document. I'm aware of a city that has one. I also, our firm created one for another one of our public agencies. That's they call it a governance manual. It's about 40 pages or so. If it works, we'll collect some of these and give you samples of them. We'll put an agenda on, and then you can give us direction as to what you want to see.
And something not 40 pages, but just something concise.
That's why I say I want to get some samples, because I want to make sure you get exactly what you want. And We don't want to create 40 pages if you only want
Yeah,
2.
sure.
And
My concern
appoint
is
Linda Draper to read them.
Thank you.
I second that.
You guys are no help. But I'm concerned with possibilities of creating a hostile work environment, of liability issues for the city, that kind of thing. If you could look for that kind of information and what's appropriate and what's not for dealing with staff, whether they're here at work or on their own time.
Certainly, we'll make that happen.
Thank you.
Councilmember Del Rosario, no, we have non-agenda items. They're still non-agenda items, so.
I just wanted to report that I'm on the Air Quality Board, and they have a new program. Before, they were replacing pellet stoves in fireplaces or in your living room, your main source of heat. If that's your main source of heat, you can get a replacement. That is still in place. But they have added to that if you meet the income requirements, you can also get a pellet stove, even though you've never had one, for your fireplace or for your heating. So it's a new program. It's a grant funded through the state. And if you contact the Air Quality Board or me, I will be happy to give you information, more information about it.
Any other council members?
I wasn't going to say anything, but maybe we need to get out of here, right? Mm-hmm. Just quickly, I met with our Assemblyman Gallagher, and regarding our PERS and the next meeting, and trying to gather his support as well to join us at the next meeting, so there isn't just cities, but some of our state representatives to speak on behalf of this issue. That's all I want to report.
Okay, well, I'm going to take my time to spend a few minutes talking about Mr. Rust. This is his final meeting, and he and I started about the same time, so I'm going to miss him. Mr. Rust started in planning when Mr. Duffy was here, and it was probably one of, I would say it was probably one of the most exciting times, even though it was a roller coaster. But some of the many things that Mr. Russ did right out of the gate were, I believe, some of the best that has happened for this city. It started with him defining what I used to talk about in my State of the City speeches was he defined the red lines, the green lines, and all the lines that from the general plan to, the reason why we weren't able to annex for a long time is because we didn't have any defining areas of where sidewalks would go. And so you had the urban line, the rural line, and the foothill line, and that really became I think the cornerstone that for our city to move forward, and I still fondly look back at that as being one of the key pivotal points for our city with Mr. Rust in that department. And then he put together all the annexation packages that are hopefully still sitting around. And then he went on from there and did the Arts and Entertainment District and ended up with an award. He ended up with Brownfield Grant Awards. Truly where he shines is in that department. Unfortunately, over the past few years, we've had to stretch him thin. And even though he stepped up to the plate, he stepped up to the plate with not only filling 2 jobs that were worth well over $100,000 each, but he stepped up and did both of them on top of many other hats that he wore. Relationships became strained, and things started falling through the cracks, not his cracks, but everybody's. But it was just unbearable on all of us. And it's hard to lose somebody that filled the shoes as well as he did. But I believe that ultimately between relationships and health and family, that the choices just had to be made. And I just want him to know personally that I'm going to miss you. With that said, is there anybody else before we move to non-agenda items?
I would like to add something, and I know that some people in the audience have felt that Mr. Rust was directing members of the council, and nothing could be further from the truth, as he is the first one that would tell you that. He always gave us the information we asked for and did so in a very objective and professional way. And several of us cried when he said he was leaving a couple of weeks ago, because it's not just a loss to us personally of his expertise and his experience and his intelligence and his integrity. It's a loss to this city. We're going to have to probably hire 2 or 3 people to do the jobs he was doing for much less. And so it's a loss. And we are going to miss him on many levels. And I wish him the best of luck at Glenn County. They did very well in landing him. And their gain is our loss. And just one correction, unless someone out there in the audience is concerned. Jennifer Griggs is the name of the new coordinator at the Butte County Continuum of Care for the homeless in Butte County. Thank you.
I would like to say something about Don before he leaves us for the last meeting. Several years ago, when he took over so many hats, there's a group of us old guys that get together on Wednesday mornings and have coffee. Now, we tell the biggest lies that we can tell each other, and that's what it is. It's just time to get together and have fun and laugh and talk about everything under the sun. And we invited Don, and he graciously accepted. The only person that ever, from the staff, that at the time, up until that time, showed up to have coffee with us. And everybody thought that, we were trying to push him around or he was giving us information. That was farthest thing from the truth, because most of the time we never talked about city business. I mean, that's not what we're there for. We're there on Wednesday mornings just to laugh and have fun. And the chief, we invited him, and he shows up once in a while when he's not too busy. And I appreciate that, because we got to know Don on a personal level rather than just a professional level. And believe it or not, he actually has a pretty good sense of humor. Most folks see him and think that well, he's just this rural guy and it's black and white and that. And that's the farthest thing from the truth if you really get to know him. And I'm going to miss those Wednesday mornings, believe me. And I know the other old guys that we have coffee with are going to miss him too. And just wanted him to know that.
Something real quick. I really just want to thank the council, the previous councils and this council, for the opportunities that I've been afforded here in Oroville. I really mean what I said earlier, that I hope not only that Oroville survives, but thrives. I think I've had a great time here. I am actually sorry that I'm leaving you guys behind and I'm going on an adventure. So for me, it's something that I need to do. That's why I kept it to myself up until I told the entire council and a couple other staff members at the same time. But I do really appreciate my time here, and I do want to thank all of you for the opportunities, and the citizens for the opportunities that I've had here. And I hope that I have at least left a small mark on the community as I leave to go on to other places. So thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to non-agenda items. Billy Spear.
I'd just like to say thank you for all your service. I know you guys put in a lot of long hours and a lot of people come here passionate, and you guys put up with a lot of stuff. And I do appreciate all the people in our city. I love our city. I love our state. I love our country. I love our Constitution. I love our First Amendment. I love to be able to participate and make a difference. I love my Second Amendment, and I am passionate about my Second Amendment. I love the Fourth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment. I love our Constitution. I carry it with me. I love being American. I love God. I love being able to come and to share my passion for our city. I love seeing other people passionate that don't agree, and when there's a break, everyone's talking and one city. And so I'm gonna close out tonight with a prayer. Father, I thank you for our city council. I thank you for our police. I thank you for all the people that serve in our city, in our county, in our state. And Father, I pray that you would give us wisdom to navigate, Father, to let your will be done in our city, in our county, in our state, that you would, Lord, help us to care about each other and to listen to each other and to respect each other and to honor each other. Thank you for Don Rust and him and his service, Lord, and we pray you'd bless him as he goes out, and that you would bless his family and protect him and guide him. And Father, we thank you that in your word it says, a house divided cannot stand. Let us not be divided. Let us be the city that comes together, and that not only will we survive but thrive. We receive those words spoken over us, Lord, that we would get that wisdom from heaven and operate in the way that would bring glory and honor to you, that we would achieve far more than our resources are showing, that we are not limited. We declare your kingdom come, your will be done in Oroville as it is in heaven. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you, City Council.
Thank you, and thank you again, Don. I actually sent a note to Don when I heard of his good news, and so I think I'll leave that private, but kudos to you. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about litter. It doesn't get talked about very much, and at the same time, it's one of those things that when I'm doing my walks all the time, I feel like I'm always picking it up. Every time I finish my walk, the city looks a little bit better than it did when I started, but I would also like to encourage, just as everyone here, to start making it a family practice, habit, whatever you can do to start dealing with this problem. I think if we take better care of ourselves, then maybe we will be considered better by DWR, by other people. We'll be more respected if we just take better care of ourselves. So I'm really hoping for us to pick up our litter a little bit better. Wait till you get to a trash receptacle, then throw it away. And I just wanted to get that out there on the table, because I don't think we say enough about such a small thing that can make a big difference. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Tasha. Bobby O'Reilly?
Last speech of the night, I promise. So I had a couple notes here, but I'm not going to get into all those because you guys covered those. I'm going to ask that City Council pay attention to their constituents. There is a lot of ways to do so. I know people email their City Council members that they get along with. There's Facebook. walking through Walmart. I can't remember exactly where I was, but I seen Councilwoman Del Rosario in town not too long ago, and seen her talking with some constituents. And just please pay attention to the people in the town. Right now is a fragile time for all of us. We want to make sure that you guys are hearing us on all issues of the city. There's a lot going on, unfortunately, in such a short time, between the cannabis issues, the public safety issues, the homeless issues, the transient issues, the theft. There's a lot going on in our town, the parks, all kinds of stuff. So again, that's what I'm asking of you guys. I have noticed that there are a few new officers with Oroville Police Department after the departure of some others. So Chief, thank you. The officers look good out there. And then the last thing I have on my notes here is good luck to Don Rust in Glenn County. We haven't always agreed on all topics, but that man has worn, like has been mentioned earlier, he's worn many hats. And I think for somebody who has stepped in that many puddles, he's done pretty good. So Don, congratulations and good luck on your venture.
Thank you. Stephanie?
First, I'd also like to tell Don that you will be missed so very dearly. But as to the reason for his leaving, as well as I found out today that what we thought would be your successor, Luis Tapetti, am I saying it right? That he's also leaving. And I feel like this is now a very serious situation. What is going on within the city is that our most dependent upon staff members are so unhappy, so frustrated, and so disheartened that they are leaving very well-paid jobs to go to another city and do the exact same thing, perhaps with fewer job responsibilities, admittedly, but nonetheless, they're staying within their current career paths, just doing it anywhere but here. And this is a huge crisis, and I feel like it deserves an investigation which answers to the public. The intricacies of running a city are so city-specific. The learning curve for a new candidate will be quite long, or stretch another human being so thin that they will need more medication or whatever. God knows what he's going to go through. And at a time when we really, truly need clear direction and leadership, we're losing both. I don't know if the staff are forced to sign non-disclosure agreements before they begin employment. I hope not, so that they are able to be truthful in their experiences, because they have a responsibility to the people they work for, not just the city council, us. And we all have relied heavily on Mr. Rust. But they have, But the issue at hand, I believe, is the usurpation of power away from the people by the mayor, and it can be seen in how badly the city has been managed in the last 8 years or so, 7 years. The mayor has badmouthed Don Rust publicly, accused him of wrongdoing, and implied that he broke the law regarding the dispensary issue, which may have been the cause of a grand jury being convened, which led nowhere. But the implication had already done plenty of damage, and then to add insult to injury, Mr. Rust's contract, which has been on pause for a ridiculously long time, was told it would need additional negotiations. How many ways could one man be told by the mayor that he was not wanted? When you use a person's financial situation as a way to try to keep control of them, that is basically a hostile work environment. And based on the fact that Luis Tapetti just gave his notice as well, seems it is not a personal issue between Mr. Rust and Mrs. Dahlmeyer. It seems, oh Christ, I didn't think it would take that long. It just seems to be a seriously toxic environment, and I ask that we all investigate it together and I look forward to November.
Thank you. John Miller George.
Mayor, I've attended 3 meetings now, and Winston Churchill said that democracy was the worst possible form of government until you looked at every other kind. You guys have even tougher jobs than what I said the last time. Any mistake is magnified in public, and it seems that a lot of well-intentioned things go astray. And you guys have to answer to people that basically don't like the menu at the restaurant. I was kind of struck. I'm sitting in the back, and I like to listen to everybody. And before meetings, if I get here in time, I like to talk to people. And I was kind of surprised last meeting when they said, oh, you guys are $73 million in debt, but it's not a real emergency. At the same time that a bunch of people are trying to come into this town and pay more taxes, all of a sudden you guys are like, oh, we can't let those monsters into town that want to pay taxes. Maybe you guys could look at that a little bit. Right now it seems that a lot of you are tweaking with the controls on the airplane, and as the engines are failing, but hey, God will save us. God helps those that help themselves. I would like to encourage you to consider Governor Hickenlooper of Colorado. He was against legalizing marijuana, publicly, loudly against it. But when the people said, let's do this, he cooperated. He didn't try to fight them. He didn't sneak around behind anybody's back. He cooperated. I'd like to encourage you, Madam Mayor, to do the same. I'd also like to give you some advice about places where you could look for consulting that might be a little less expensive. First off, in Sebastopol, they opened up a cannabis dispensary named Peace and Medicine. The guy did such a good job that the city of Santa Rosa asked him to come and open one there. And they didn't let children use anything. They didn't do all the bad stuff that all the fearful people talked about. He just did a good job. And they elected him mayor. One of the guys that worked at the Peace and Medicine that opened in Santa Rosa became a city councilman. So there's an upside to paying your bills and doing things right and cooperating.
Thank you, John. Mary?
If I may, I have a question for Mr. Huber, but I have it kind of typed out and it might help us if I might be able to give it to him to review. Okay, thank you. I'd also sent an email to Mr. Russ. I apologize for misspelling your name, sir. I've been looking up information regarding initiatives, referendums, and recalls. I was provided with some information by Dawn, and I appreciate that. What I'd like to confirm, if possible, with Mr. Huber is that if an initiative or referendum were given to the city of Oroville, that as a city attorney, you would proceed in accordance with the state elections code, which I'm pretty sure that's what you would do, but I just want to confirm that. Since the above municipal code does not outline the process of how an initiative or referendum will proceed through the city of Oroville, I was also directed by Dawn to check out the state election code, so that's why I'm also thinking that you're going to go that way. I would also like to know if there are any other codes you will rely on if an initiative or referendum goes your way. I would like to verse myself in those as well. Secondly, I had an email to Mr. Rust that as a city administrator that he oversees the planning department, and I have a question regarding the marijuana redistricting. After reading the Planning Commission's regulations, I noted that the Commission is responsible for supplying the City Council with a planning report regarding any ordinance changes, as noted in the highlighted section below. I have copies for you if you'd like them. My question is, has the planning commission been asked by the city council to provide a report as directed by the municipal code? And thank you in advance. And I just like some additional information on those things if possible. So I have my email printed out where it specifically talks about the planning commission, and I just highlighted the area here.
Is that the same? Is that the email that
that's
you
the email I
also sent
CC'd
me?
you, and I gave to Vice Mayor Goodson as well. And it came in kind of late, Vice Mayor. I apologize. I think I sent it around 4:30. I have a copy if you'd like to review it. I made extra copies if you'd like to review it now. If not, that's fine too. And you mentioned some coffee at the, I guess at the airport, and I wanted to be a part of the Chamber of Commerce and going out there for coffee. Where is it at the airport? Because you were going out there. Where is it at the airport? I looked and I couldn't find it on any website. You said you were going out for coffee at the airport?
No, I said that the Chamber of Commerce, once a month, they go to different local businesses.
Oh.
This particular month, it happened to be at the airport in the lobby area. We also were given a tour.
Oh.
So if you need any more specificity, you can just
I looked
connect
online
with
and
the
I missed
Chamber
it. I'll
of
check
Commerce.
again. I'll check again.
Sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. Steve Terry? Did you sit too long?
Yes.
How do you think we feel?
I would honestly say that I feel like I'm getting old, but then I have to rebuke that. Actually, the first thing I came up for was I have a couple posters here on Saturday, March the 24th at the Historic State Theater. The Oroville Exchange Club will be putting on our annual Search for Talent. And I actually have a couple posters if we'd like to put those up in the city council. It is for kids. They'll go out to the schools. It is a great time, and so I would like to extend that.
And Donovan was our winner for the junior last year.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. The other thing I would like to say, I had at the last meeting I was able to be at, I had a conversation with Councilmember Del Rosario and Councilmember Draper outside, and it was a great conversation, and something I really want to really address. I see people come up all the time, and most of you know I absolutely, and I'll mention marijuana. I absolutely. Anyone here wonder what my stance has been on that? I guess you probably don't. I am dead set against it in every way, shape, or form. But you know what? And I got a compliment from both ladies. I have yet to attack any person on this council for that. I don't agree with the decision. I won't agree with the decision. But I'm not going to attack anybody. And I think we should caution our community members coming up here to attack. You know, when you want to attack me personally, and I'm a public personality, running the mission, I get everyone's conversation about how to run the mission. And everyone's an expert. And generally when I start getting attacked like that, you know what? I generally just turn it off. And so we all have opinions, and they're valid opinions. And I would agree. I think what Bobby said is right. I think that the citizens need to be listened to. I think it's important. But folks, let's not make it personal. Let's keep it the way it belongs. Everyone up here, I believe everyone on this council cares about this city, and that's something that we need to bear in mind. And to Don Rust, let me say this. Don, you and I both know we have not agreed on a lot of things, but Don, I wish you well. I've never questioned whether or not you cared for our city, and so I really wish you well. And you will be a hard person to fill. And to Chief, good luck. You're already stretched. So anyway, would somebody like these?
I'll see that they get posted. Thank you.
Anybody else on non-agenda items? Anybody? Mr. Bynum?
Yes, I'll be brief. I mentioned a few months ago that we're a captive audience, and if I wanted to hear prayers, I'd go to church. And if somebody wants to try to convert me, they can come to my house, and I can respectfully decline. And I resent having to listen to prayers in a public meeting, and to me, it's a form of bullying, and I would like it to stop. I would like for you to stop bullying me. I shouldn't have to listen to that in a public meeting. I'm just letting you know that's my feelings about it, and I feel strongly about it. And I'm a school board member, and I know what bullying is. And it's when you're imposing your beliefs on other people who don't want those beliefs imposed on them. And I resent it.
Thank you, Mr. Bynum. Anybody else on non-agenda items? August?
I just want to know what happened to the...
You need to speak in the microphone, August. Thank you.
I just want to know what happened to the water study, the $30,000. Is it still active? It's dead?
No, it's still, it's not done yet.
It's still going on?
I think it is, yeah.
That's a long study.
Yeah, you bet.
They're working on it. Thank you.
They're working on it?
Yeah. Anybody else? This meeting is adjourned. The next regularly scheduled meeting is Tuesday, March 20th, 2018 at 5:30 p.m.
Thank you for coming, Dawn. Thank you for participating.
You what?
Yes! You're old news.
So the next time I want to be a piñata, I'll call you. It was, honest to God, I've been doing this for 3 years. That was the most vicious, most biased, most predisposed group of people. I know. I mean, there was not a single, actually, before you got there, after about 15, 20 minutes, I kind of said, can you tell me why I'm here? Because there was no reason for me to be there. There wasn't anybody in that room who had any interest in learning anything. It's okay, it's not your fault, it's not your fault. I've just been joking about it, going, now I know what a pinata feels like. No, I'm not apologizing, it's fine. You're trying to get different points of view in front of different people. That is exactly what you do, and you do it really well.